I'll just let you call your point of order. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I misunderstood. That's not, that's not, I thought those were the names. That's not the names, so.
That's all right.
Okay, Ben, we're getting ready to start. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the work session joint meeting between the Harnett County Board of Commissioners and the Harnett County Board of Education. We will, at this time, allow Mr. Jaggers to call, and I'll call the commissioners into order and allow Mr. Jaggers to call his board into order.
I would like to call the Harnett County School Board joint meeting with the county commissioners September 27th to order at this time.
At this time, we'll have the pledge and invocation. Commissioner Mark Johnson.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, come to you this morning to the joint meeting with the school board and the county commissioners. Lord, I ask for your blessings for this county as our COVID-19 virus has risen to over 17,000 cases in Harnett County. A lot of people are affected in a lot of different ways. We ask for your blessings on that. We have so many problems across the world. We just ask for your blessings, Father. And we ask for you to bless our school children and our staff in the schools in the county. As we look in our lives, each one obviously blesses in particular ways. We just thank you for blessing us and our families. Just ask you to always be with us and always ask us to reach out to you. Make these things in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. This time I'd like to ask Attorney Dwight Snow if he would administer the oath of office to our new deputy clerk, Jamie Bell-Ragg.
This is Jamie Bell-Ragg. She is going to be our new deputy clerk of the Board of Commissioners, assistants to the rest of the staff. Thank you, clerk. It's my honor and my privilege to on behalf of the Board of Commissioners administer to you today your oath of office. Hold this Bible with your left hand and raise your right hand. This is your oath of office. Do you, Jamie Bell-Ragg, solemnly swear that you will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Constitution and the laws of North Carolina not inconsistent therewith, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Deputy Clerk of the Board of Commissioners of Harnett County, North Carolina, that you will not allow your actions as Deputy Clerk of the Board to be influenced by personal or political friendships or obligations to help God. I will.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Thank you, Ms. Ray. At this time, we will enter into our redistricting discussion. Mr. Snow, Mr. Pell, who's going to lead that?
Mr. Greg Shire, my remote, is supposed to present.
Morning. Craig Shower here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good morning. I want to start by apologizing.
Ben, we need to get the volume turned up. Can't hear. Try again, Mr. Shire.
Sure. Can you hear me better now, sir?
That's better. Yes, sir.
Great. Well, I want to open by apologizing that I cannot be there in person. I heard a little bit of the invocation and the prayer referencing COVID, and COVID struck close to home. One of my sons tested positive. And even though we think it was a false positive now, we have to take the necessary precautions, which means I'm stuck at home for a few days. I really regret I can't be there in person. But thanks to technology, we're still able to move ahead and have this meeting. So I'm very grateful for that. I'll start, if it's all right, with because we're remote, I suggest me maybe setting a little bit of an agenda. And then as part of that agenda, I'll introduce you to Peter Morrison, who's the lead demographer on the team of demographers who will walk you through the map. But what I'd like to do is I've prepared some slides, and if someone, is it possible that you guys would be able to see a screen if I show you some slides, which is really, the slides are just a reorganization of the handout we sent in advance. Do you have the availability to see a screen somewhere in the room?
Mr. Chairman, I understand there's some slides, but they've not been presented to all members. Where would those be for us to review, or at least have them prior to the meeting to have reviewed them? Were they sent out to other members, or were they just sent out to some members?
I know the commissioners received some a little bit after 4 on Friday. Is that correct, Mr. Appel?
Yes, those are initial maps that we received.
Initial maps.
And were those sent to the Board of Education?
I don't know. You know, Mr. Bullock?
They were sent to me, but I did not check my email after 4 on Friday, so that's.
What did you say?
I didn't.
I checked my email, I did receive them, but it was late Friday, so I did not.
Did you receive them?
On Friday, after the afternoon, I did not.
Being back to Mr. Shire's question, can he put those slides up for us to see?
You should be able to. Can you see if you can share screen? If not, I might have to go give you presenter rights.
Yeah, no, I can share screen. 1 second. Are y'all able to see a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
All right. Well, for the board members, for the school board members who weren't able to receive the handout in advance, what I've done is I've essentially reorganized the handout in slide format to kind of facilitate us walking through it today. What I'd like to discuss with the board is kind of 2 things. First, I'd like to address the issue of substantial inequality, which is really covered by this first slide and the numbers, which I'll address in 1 second. And then the second step is I'd like to turn it over, after me making a few brief remarks, turn it over to Peter Morrison, the lead demographer, to talk about the initial draft map and some of the unique challenges presented by Harnett County. As you will see in the current slide in front of you, the table on the left of the slide is the current population of the various districts in Harnett County. As the demographers, I want to have a little aside here, as the demographers work through drawing a joint map for both boards, they started with the commissioner's map, and these numbers are actually based on the commissioner's current districts. We understand and we're very aware that there are some modest modifications or differences between the commissioner map and the school board map. Particularly, I think, in terms of trying to capture some incumbents in certain districts. However, based on the demographers' study of the 2 maps, they are virtually identical, I think was the term they used. And so based on the near identicality of the 2 maps, they did a population count of the current districts using the commissioner's map for ease of presentation. And they presented those numbers in the table on the left. And so what you see is the current total population for the 5 districts in Harnett County. These are the actual commissioner populations, which serve as I'd say a pretty precise proxy for the school board district populations as well. And at the bottom of the table, you'll see the 95%, the average, and the 105%. And if you recall the meeting that I had with both boards separately, several weeks ago, we talked about the standard for substantial inequality in North Carolina, and we talked about using the 5% test. And so what the demographer did is they took the total population of the county, which is over 133,000. They divided that by 5, which gives you the ideal district or the average district of just shy of 27,000, so 26 8.7 thousand. And then they did a 5% range from that. So down to 95% or up to 105%. And any district that is smaller than 25.3 thousand or larger than 28,000 is considered to be too large or too small respectively. And as you can see on the table, District 1 is too small and District 2 and 5 are too large. And so therefore, based on this 2020 census data, as we expected when speaking with the boards, there is substantial inequality in the current districts as drawn, and there's a need to rebalance them. I have drafted resolutions for the respective boards, which I will have available, make available to the boards at their next, regular meeting. And the resolutions are fairly simple, but they allow, in particular, I'll speak to the commissioner's resolution, that allows the commissioners to make a finding that based on the 2020 census data, there is substantial inequality in the existing districts, and there's a need to redistrict. I mentioned the commissioner's resolution simply because, as a matter of law, the Board of Commissioners must pass a resolution finding substantial inequality. So that is a statutory requirement that the board must meet before it can actually redraw maps. Interestingly, for the school board members, you do not have the same statutory requirement. There is no statutory obligation for you to pass a resolution finding substantial inequality, but we do believe it's a good practice. And so we've drafted a similar resolution for the Board of Education. So this is the basis of us establishing that there is a need to redraw the districts. Before I turn to the new districts, I just want to recap my meetings with the board members, and we identified certain objectives that the board shared. And I guess the two boards were not together, but I met with the boards independently. And there were shared objectives that were drawn from those two meetings. And the four primary ones that I heard were there's a need to rebalance the population. In particular, there was concern that certain districts, I believe District 5 in the South West, had grown substantially. And sure enough, the numbers bore that out. In addition to population rebalance, there was the need to retain a VRA district, a minority majority district. There was the desire to avoid double bunking of incumbents. And then finally, there was the desire to try to create a map that both boards could use so that there would be no confusion as voters went to the voter booths on election day, that they would know that if you're in District 1 for the commissioners, you're also in District 1 for the school district. And so as the demographers embarked on the task of redrawing maps, they found that Harnett County presented a series of challenges. The first of which was it was difficult to try to maintain a significant minority population in District 1 because of the scattered residences of a lot of Black residents, a lot of Black citizens in Harnett County. And that's really the reason why you see kind of the current District 1. But in addition to trying to maintain a minority district or a substantial Black population in District 1, there was the objective of trying to simultaneously increase the population. And so as you increase the population of District 1 in order to rebalance its population and bring it up towards the average, you have to be mindful of the demographics of the populations that you bring into it. If you were to repopulate it with all white citizens, you would dilute the voting power of the Blacks and the citizens, and therefore undermine voting power of the Black residents in District 1, and therefore undermine the ability to achieve a VRA compliant district. And so that led the demographers to work from the commissioner map and try to strive for a map that maintained, or I should say achieved population equality, but also maintained a VRA district to the extent possible. And so the next slide is the recommended joint plan 1. So this is a first draft of a joint map for the commissioners. And at this point, Peter Morrison, you're on the line. What I'd like to do is turn it over to you, kind of walk the commissioners through the map And then commissioners and board members, school board members, if it's all right, I would suggest we let Mr. Morrison complete his presentation and then we move to questions and answers. Normally I would welcome a back and forth, but with us being remote, I'm a little worried that a back and forth could become cumbersome and difficult to manage. So maybe Mr. Morrison could complete his discussion of the map, and then we'll go to questions and answers and have a discussion about changes that need to be made or questions about the map.
Okay, can everyone hear me sufficiently loud enough there?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm the demographer in this engagement, and Craig has done a good job of overviewing how we propose to realign the current election districts using the new 2020 census population counts. And just a little background, you probably know that the census has been hampered by lots of delays and lots of, concerns. And in fact, they have not actually issued the official 2020 census retail version of the redistricting file. They put out an early version that they call the legacy file, which means you got to know what you're doing with it and act like you worked at the Census Bureau. So we're up and running with this, and that's fortunate because I know you have a tight deadline coming up. A little bit about who I am. I'm formerly with the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica, California. I've been involved in redistricting on the outside of my employment at Rand for about 3 decades. I'm the author of a manual on redistricting for those of you who want to develop a bad habit. And I've mostly been engaged with municipalities and school districts around the country to either establish a new plan or to typically defend a municipality or a school district against a plaintiff's challenge many years or several years after the census and after they engaged in redistricting. So my perspective on this is pretty much how do you get the districts equal and how do you avoid attracting a plaintiff who might want to challenge the plan. Now, Craig has done a good job of outlining the legal parameters that govern redistricting, and I'm just going to refer to this initial revised plan we've drafted, and the main order of business today is to have you understand why the changes that we made are necessary, and for that I would invite your questions after I'm through, because I want you to understand why we had to make the changes. And I also want you to appreciate the kind of the dilemma we face, which is the plan you now have is the foundation of a plan going forward that will that we can adjust to accomplish the 2 key objectives, which is to return to substantial equality of total population, and also not give any credence to any plaintiff who might say, well, in the process of doing that, you engaged in vote dilution. So it's very important not to stray too far and to try to envision a whole new plan that might work, particularly when you have 10 incumbents in 2 different boards. I wonder, Craig, if you could put up the slide that shows the before and after, because that's probably the one that we want to focus on. And what this shows, it'll take you a second or two to sort of get it straight in your head, but it shows the plan that we're proposing as the recommended joint plan number 1, and it will show also the boundaries of the current plan so you can see where territory has been shifted. So just to give you, if you look at this map and focus on District 5, you'll see that the that the blue-gray District 1 sort of, as you know, snakes its way westward and then works its way downward and then over to the east again as it sort of takes portions or includes portions of District 5. And the portions of District 5 that it now includes are shown in the blue-gray color. And those faint boundaries that I hope you can see show the portion of it that it used to encompass in your current plan, or it now encompasses in your current commissioner plan. So what we have here is the inevitable swapping of territory and of constituents that, politically speaking, alters
Wow, it's got the time limit. You gotta use the paid version. Thank you.
Mr. Shire, I don't know if you can hear me, but Zoom's ended.
I did that once.
Really wish it would have been here, huh?
We have a paid version of Zoom if they need it.
You would think the
The attorneys would pay for Zoom.
You would think in today's technology, this would not happen.
So we have a paid version.
You're not the only one.
I'm gonna call Jennifer just in case we need her. Thank you. Cause she's got the, if you do need a paid version of Zoom. Hey, come over here. Can you come over to the commissioners meeting down here at, new building? Yeah, with the new building. I'll be with Zoom on making so
We might want to recess.
Well, that's what I suggest. I was going to suggest. That's why I wanted to let you know it's going to take a few minutes. to get all that done. So you don't want to take a break.
Thank you. Well, I've just been informed that it'd probably take them around 15 minutes to get the licensed version going. I know Dr. Fleming has asked our technology coordinator to come, technology director to come. His school system does have a paid copy of Zoom, so maybe we can use it. But anyway, we'll recess until we get our connection reestablished. Thank you. Right. Well, that's why I told them to print them out. So. Good question. No, I didn't hear him mention that. I guess things I'm making. I'm sure. We'll say, we'll have to I didn't hear him mention that. I'm here for you guys. Yes, you are.
Right. The news world was not news.
Don't even know the process for doing that, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's time, I don't think we got the time. Let me go talk to the attorneys here.
You're wasting your time.
Charlie's got a Superior Court 11.
Yeah, the free.
They could probably provide her new batches. I think I'm gonna turn this out this meeting, so they can do that stuff. We're just teaching wasting time.
I think your horse getting ready.
Yeah, and Jennifer's on her way over. I think you'll have it.
I think we're gonna get out of the meeting until they can get us the stuff they need us to have. You good?
Yeah, if she did.
I'm good either. Call us back into session.
Okay, if I could have your attention, please. I'd like to call us back into session.
School board members, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to come back into session, Mr. Chairman.
No, not that motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn, and the discussion would be is, we're not prepared, they're not prepared for this meeting, we don't have the maps, we don't have anything we can actually look at to talk further about this with it, you know, with an understanding of what's, I seen the maps that y'all got, you can't even read them in detail to understand anything, so I have a motion and a second, the chairman will vote aye.
Godfrey will vote aye.
Howell votes aye. Limits votes aye.
Bennett,
Okay, we are, Harnett County School Board meeting is adjourned at this time.
We do want to thank y'all for being here this morning. I'm sorry we wasted your time. Hopefully we'll be better prepared the next go around. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it wasn't you that wasn't prepared. Hey, make sure.
Right.
but this
But commissioners, as the school board representatives leave, remember, we still have some business to attend to.
man,
It was fun to hang out with you guys. Appreciate you being here.
I
always enjoy being here.
Nothing has happened. I'm tired of getting up this early. But listen, I have tired of getting up this early. Turn it up and do what I do.
Let's go out to discuss.
Well, I don't really care.
Sorry about that. We'll get it straight. All right, appreciate it. Okay, at this time, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, that being the final review, question and answers for the Economic Development Strategic Plan that was developed by Rose and Associates.
Chairman, I believe we've got Kathleen Rose on Zoom.
I'm yet.
Okay. I can briefly go over that if you like, and until she gets back on Zoom. I can give kind of a brief summary.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be fine if you want to give us a summary. If she's not on by that time, we'll move on down the agenda
Sure. So as you're well
and come back. Yep.
As you're well aware, the Board of Commissioners asked Kathleen to come on board as Rose and Associates back in April of 2021. Quite a bit of work has been done over the last 4 months. The steering committee, stakeholder meetings, collecting data, tour of the county, Economic Development Summit, June the 8th was presented here in this room that went very well. And then Ms. Rose came and gave a final presentation of the Economic Development Strategy to the Board of Commissioners on August 31st of this year. So basically, what you've got is you've got a digital copy and a hard copy that was handed out to you a few weeks ago. So in that, I'll just briefly summarize. In this document, there is a vision, a competitive analysis, an economic development structure, a real estate product being Edgerton, Brightwater, and Western Harnett Innovation Park. It talks about lifestyle. It talks about economic development strategy, those being attraction, which is product development, business retention and expansion, small business entrepreneurship, and tourism. And then the meat of it, as far as kind of what we're going to talk about today, is page 36 and page 37, which is your 5-year action plan, and page 38 and 39 is your 5-year implementation plan. So basically, thank you. So basically this morning, Kathleen is here to answer any questions, comments that you have about how you'd like to see this document finalized, and then how you would like to move forward. So as soon as we get her up, she'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Okay.
Anything specific that you'd like to discuss before then, I'll be glad to try to answer. Mr. Wood and I would.
Any questions for Mr. Price or Mr. Wood? Ms. Capstan, we know what time she was going to be
I
on?
think about 1:45, so we're a little early.
Okay. I saw her up on the screen earlier. When
We didn't
first started.
anticipate the other session would end so quick.
All right, well, let's put that item on hold, and we'll come back and revisit when Ms. Rose joins us, and move on to item 6, discussion of Sand Hill Center resolution requesting a statutory exemption to expand the number of voting board members. Commissioner Nickel.
All right, do I possibly have a slide or no? Do I have the resolution up there? I can briefly go over it. What I'm asking is that we pass a resolution on October 4th. What had happened is Department of Health and Human Services has dissolved an LME MCO, which is basically a group to provide services. There were 6 of them across the state, and in the Sand Hills Board, we have a total of 9, and we're actually going to be absorbing 2 of the dissolved counties that were dissolved in another LME MCO, and we're trying to pick them up. Right now, there's only 21 board seats that's allotted according to the North Carolina statute for that board. Right now, we are maxed out with 21 board seats. They are all filled, so that doesn't leave any vacant positions to be left open for the 2 new counties that are going to be joining the Sand Hills So the resolution, we're gonna be asking that, and as long as they're, I believe it's, like 1.125 million, in population, according to the LME MCO, it can be voted on and actually a resolution passed as long as all the counties that are involved in that board, can agree and pass the resolution in order to modify that to where we can get additional seats. So we're trying to get 2 more board seats, I believe 2 for Randolph County and 3 for Davidson, and that's only.
Good morning.
And that's only due to the population size and increase that we are having.
Excuse me. Good morning, Ms. Rose. If you could hang on just a minute, we moved on to the next item until we could get you back on, so if you'll just give us a minute.
So this here is the resolution, and I'm asking that we get it put on the calendar or the agenda for our October 4th meeting. I can also get Ms. Victoria Witt to come in and speak on this a little bit more, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Nichol. Any questions or comments for Commissioner Nichol? Commissioner McCoy?
I know you said in the very beginning, how many board members what is the total number of board members if we do this?
Right now, there's currently 21 board members on the Sand Hills Center board, and they're bumping it up to, I believe, 26. So that they're adding, is it 26 or 25?
You said 2 and 3, so that'd be 5.
Okay. I didn't know that there could be an even number, but they're adding 2 spots, I believe, for Randolph County. And 3
Melissa,
spots
will
for
you go
Davidson
down on
County, so they
that
can
resolution to where that's addressed?
And all this is doing is modifying the state statute.
I think it's on down a little bit.
I got you. So the question is, Sand Hill is inheriting.
Yeah, 26.
They are inheriting those counties
Yes, ma'am.
that left, what is it, Partner?
Yes, it was called Via was actually we have Sand Hills and there was Via that was split up in the state, and apparently DHHS found the need in order to dissolve them because they were appropriating practice how they should have been. So those counties that were in that LMC or LME MCO are getting split up, and we're picking up 2 of them for Sand Hills.
Well, thank you. I understand that because I served on that board for about 4 years.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will say that, upon originally looking at that, I was a little bit concerned that some counties would have more representation than others. I know that was dependent upon population, but actually when I look at the 21 members that it has now and adding 2 more counties and going to 26, it actually dilutes a little bit the overrepresentation, if you will, of board members there. So that's certainly not a concern. So if anybody else had that same concern, I just wanted to mention that. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Nichol?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to see this item added to the agenda, preferably the consent agenda, unless one of the commissioners has a objection.
Any objection to adding this item to the consent agenda? Mr. McCoy? Okay, we're good. Let's, Mr. Wood, Melissa, if you'd put that on the consent agenda for the October 4th session. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Rose, we'll go back to you now. Thank you for joining us this morning. I guess she's still here.
Yeah, she is. Try one more time.
Technical difficulties.
She's muted.
Yeah, try it again.
Frozen.
Good morning.
Good morning. We hear you now, Ms. Rose. Thank you for for allowing us to finish that item.
Sorry, no worries. Technology's great when it works, isn't it?
It's great when it works, but that does not seem to be the norm from my experience. So.
Oh, goodness. Are you ready for me?
We're ready. Mr. Price gave a brief introduction, and so we are ready for your part.
Can we enlarge?
Okay, very good. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right, great. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize as well that I can't be with you in person. However, we did visit on August 31st when I provided the final presentation, and at that time you had literally just been given the report, so wanted a little time to review it. So I will be quiet. I can share my screen if you need to, but otherwise on my end, I have the report here available. So whatever questions, comments you have, fire away. It might be helpful for me if you have a specific page, then I can be at the same place you are with that.
Mr. Price, what pages were those you wanted us to take a close look at?
36 through 39 is your 5-year action plan and 5-year implementation plan, unless you have any questions or comments with the ones that I outlined earlier.
Yes, Ms. Rose, if you could maybe go to, let's look at 36 through 39.
Yep. Okay, well, the implementation action plan obviously starts with just some kind of definitional pieces, if you will, that describes what we are looking at here. Was there specific questions that you all had, or did you want me to just talk through that, or?
Yes, ma'am. If you don't mind sharing your screen and talking through that, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. All righty, can you see my screen?
We can, it's just on about half of the page.
Yeah, there you go. That should be it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you see that page now?
Yes.
Okay, so the implementation action plan, we start with just in general a definition for economic development. And really what the implementation plan is really from, you know, analysis and data and observations, recommendations into, okay, what do we do from analyzing and strategy into doing. So as mentioned, we looked at 4 key areas, attraction, which is recruiting new. We mentioned second stage companies. Attraction usually refers to larger, more mature companies, and that can be in partnership with the Triangle Partnership and North Carolina Economic Development Corporation, because many of the larger mature companies that come to an area looking are going to come through those larger organizations generally, or through a site selection professional. The second is business retention and expansion, which is enabling existing businesses to grow, stay, and expand within Harnett County. Small business entrepreneurship is really about Main Street type programs, smaller companies that are startups or in early growth stages. That's generally, you know, the types of companies that are going to be seen through a Chamber of Commerce effort. Service-related companies, professional organizations, that sort of thing. And then, of course, lastly, tourism, which we talked about during our presentation, which really is a concept of every citizen and business is an ambassador, because many of the folks that either move to Harnett County and or bring a business come first as a visitor. So it's important to make those great, good first impressions, if you will, that it's not only a great place to live, but also a great place to work and or bring the business. So we talk about 4 primary initiatives that kind of thread through all 4 of these key economic development areas. First is marketing, talent attraction and retention, collaboration, and advocacy. So we can get into each of these in more detail, but, they're really talking about just the need to revisit the marketing. The website is great. It's very robust. There will need to be some changes and modifications to have it more business oriented. Right now, it's fairly lifestyle oriented, which is great. It shows what a great place Harnett County is to live, but we felt that it could use some improvements there. The other thing we're finding from a marketing standpoint is that many economic development organizations are having to shift from the traditional packets of information to more web and social media based efforts. And so I did notice, for example, that LinkedIn, which is a very strong social media presence in the business world and from economic development standpoint, Harnett County does have a LinkedIn page. So in LinkedIn, you can either be an individual, having your own page, which many folks have, or you can create a page, which is for an organization, a company, or a government entity. So Harnett County already does have a page. However, it's not really robust. There haven't been any posts to it. So that's a wonderful opportunity to really start to share some of the great stories and news about Harnett County and your successes and some of the companies you have been able to attract, et cetera. And also to promote sites and/or the parks that are available for development. Second is talent attraction and retention. And here we talked a lot about this in regard to Campbell University. You have a whole group of, a whole asset there that your greatest export is intellectual capital. So while many of these students come and move through the community during their time at Campbell, the question then becomes, how do we engage them while they're at the university in the business realm, and how do we perhaps attract them to come back, both post-graduation or post-career. Many college communities have efforts to bring alumni back. I don't have any idea how many alumni are in the university, but a great number of them, may come back to visit from time to time. And many of them, especially from other parts of the country, may look to come back to retire. And they always want to be, folks many times when they're choosing a retirement community will want to be in a place where there's continuing education or cultural events and that sort of thing. Collaboration, I start with the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Regional collaboration is incredibly important. And what we found is if the municipalities and everybody works independently of each other and don't communicate and collaborate, sometimes you're at cross purposes and/or maybe competing with each other within your own community. And that's very difficult to compete with other areas and other counties who are all, so to speak, singing from the same hymnal and talking about the same initiatives and things as one voice instead of multiple voices that may or may not be in tune with each other. Advocacy, again, that one voice and collaborative effort could help lift and get the attention of state and regional or even federal funding options. For example, to get the attention of the state North Carolina Economic Development Partnership. And if they feel that there's a collaborative effort in a community, that usually rises to the level of attention greater than any one individual voice. So those are the four kind of broad initiatives that we talk about, and then we put them into that action plan. We always like to have an action plan that has targets. You can't get everything done all at once. So what are the early things that you can do, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and then what other things do you move toward over the subsequent years? So, again, it doesn't all happen in a day, just as Lee County, some of you mentioned, Lee County's the work we did with them that was over, 10 to 15 years ago, and they're still working that plan. And so it didn't happen overnight for them, but incrementally over time. So the question is, how do we start with what we can do now versus plan for the future? And of course, all the activities are going to require one of three things: a policy creation or modification of a policy. Many of the tasks we mentioned can be handled by staff or partners in operations. And then, of course, there's capital. Which ones require funding, which ones are already funded, if they're used staff related, et cetera. And then we like to have milestones. How do we know we're making progress or have succeeded? And that's one of the things we always include, so that you can start to measure your successes and measure those things a little more definitively, because again, that helps with proof of concept, if you will, funding mechanisms. So I talked about the 2015 plan and the 4 goals that were included in the 2015 plan. And I mentioned some of the things in terms of the marketing. So again, that's a clear thread throughout our plan, is the marketing issue. I wasn't able to ascertain a formal business retention expansion program, which you can create policies and programs. I did it throughout this report, included toolkits. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when there's a lot of tools and available information out there. So I did include things from International Economic Development Council and the Research Council that are already ready-made policies and programs that you could employ to get you up and running and tweak as needed. Building a better overall economic product. You've already begun and done a tremendous amount of work on that in terms of Brightwater and Edgerton, but it is important to think about those shovel-ready or certified sites. Those can be handled through bringing somebody in to do due diligence work. The Certified Sites program through Duke Energy is as you know, which was done in one site over at, I think, Edgerton, is a process worth doing, because the bottom line is any company or developer, whether it's a developer or a company looking for a site, they really are trying to mitigate risk, because the goal for them is to get out of the ground and to productive use as quickly as possible. And the closer you are to ready to put a shovel in the ground, meaning all the background engineering is done, the environmental, the understanding the sewer and water, having all of those questions answered helps get you to market sooner. And so that reduction in risk is an impact of time. And so the closer you can do that and mitigate the risk, the more success you'll have, both in terms of attracting developers and or companies. And building organizational capacity. And again, that was the area that also needs some work. Right now, it's a department of 1 or 2 people. And so at one point it was 4. So it's really important to have some continuity and stability in terms of the staffing. And as I mentioned to Coley and the staff, is that the foundation of your organization can be this report, as well as the 2015 plan. And from this, we sent you all a report in a bound binder, but we sent the staff's version in a 3-ring binder with the hopes that you put it in a big 3-ring binder and you begin to build a department from it, with each of those 4 areas of economic development having their own section and some of the policies that you start to implement in terms of each of those. So you have this foundation of that now that you can build from. Going on to page 38, this is the actual plan. So we start to talk about first, again, marketing, and then we talk about which area it's affecting economically, whether it be attraction, business retention, tourism. I highlighted several things. I don't know if you want me to go through them or if you had specific questions. But where possible, I provided links and resources either in this area for a direct link for documents and or included them in the separate zip toolkit binder. Were there any specific questions on page 38 or page 39? And of course, you know, I'm sure we could continue to add more. This is something that's a foundation. What we have done in the past with clients is you take this and this really becomes the work plan for the department. And so you can add a column in terms of funding or in terms of policy changes. And, you know, this can be put in an Excel spreadsheet and used as an ongoing plan. So again, many clients start with this plan, they add columns to it, and then they every year revisit the plan. What have we accomplished? What haven't we? Why? What do we need to do in terms of policy changes, funding, et cetera?
Any questions or comments at this time? Mr. Price, did you have something? Sorry. Ms. McCoy.
Catherine, excuse me, take this off. Catherine and I have been serving on this board for some years now. Economic development is one of the things that I'm most focused on. I'm really focused in on because 6 to 8% of our citizens go out of this county for jobs, and we need jobs. And all that you have reported in this report is accurate as far as I'm concerned. But the one thing I have not heard you say anything about, because I've been looking at the TV and I watch the counties that are recruiting jobs, recruiting industry. And some of them are small, but the difference in those counties is they are well diverse. They focus in on being diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I think that that should play a part into our plan. Because if a company is not coming here, unless you have that kind of atmosphere in this county. I looked at Apple when Apple came to Wake County. And when Apple came to Wake County, they had a press conference. And the one thing they did was to let the chairman of the county commissioner speak to the people. And he gave his anatomy of why Apple chose Wake County. And these were the things that he said brought Apple to Harnett County. I mean, to not Harnett County, but to Wake County. So I'm saying to you, does that play a role in us recruiting industry here in Harnett County? Until we have a county that includes that, these major, large companies are not coming here. And that's what I have been trying to voice to the county commissioners and to our staff for the time that we've been talking about this. We can waste all this money, put all this money in this plan, but until you change your way here in Harnett County, it's not going to happen. And that's what I got to say. That's all. I know what I've said, and it's not pleasing to some of your ears, but it's the truth. And the truth is the truth.
Thank you,
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Just to respond to that, if you will, is that we don't specifically call that out, but it's implied in the plan. That is part of workforce development, lifestyle recruitment, the things we mentioned in terms of quality of life and cultural community fit. So equity, diversity, and inclusion is assumed in that, but we don't mandate that in our economic development plans. That's something that a county policy. So many times communities or cities or towns or counties will actually have their own DEI policies, statements, or programs that is not specific to economic development per se, but should flow throughout all departments.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and that is something I feel that is very much needed in this county.
Yes, and you are right that many of the companies, larger ones, particularly tech companies, are very sensitive to that issue and will be looking for that. And that's the cultural fit piece. We can't impose or mandate culture in an economic development plan. That has to come from within the community.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Rose, thank you for your hard work on this project and for your time this morning in sharing with us and giving us an opportunity to express any comments or ask any questions that we might have. And if I don't hear anything else, we're going to let Ms. Rose go and move on. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you. So then for the October 4th meeting, we need to just put this on the agenda to approve and accept. Okay. Any reason not to make that part of the consent agenda at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I just got one comment if I may.
Yes, sir.
I totally agree with what she's saying as far as blending the 2015 plan. It did have a lot of good points. That's why she gave the 3-ring binder and we can add to that. So obviously this board is very focused on that, which we know. So now I think as we discussed earlier, we're in the process of doing the search committee for a new director who will be the leader of that particular department, that with cohesive efforts between the board of commissioners, the properties corp, and the economic development council, how we come up and rise together to put these things in place. So I think that's the whole goal of putting this in the adoption and making that happen. So it's going to take a little bit of time, probably 45, 60 days before we get somebody in this role. But I do feel this is the right direction, and I applaud the board for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Price. I appreciate those comments. I will share it, and I know that all of you probably heard the same comments I've heard, but I think some of our leadership, I guess, with the Properties Court, Economic Development Council, there is a sense of not really knowing the direction or purpose. And so that's one of the things that we had hoped this would enable us to do, is to get folks on the same page, understand the direction that the board desired, because I don't think there's any question we're all on the same page with regard to the need for bringing jobs to Harnett County, to having a good plan, economic development plan, and moving in that direction. So part of that may well be because the economic development director's position was not filled when the last person left. I'm just not sure, but I agree. We need to get to where we all have a shared focus, a shared goal, and shared direction. And hopefully that's what this is going to allow us to do. That was the hope, I think, of all the commissioners when we embarked on this journey with Rose and Associates.
It will, and thank you for saying that, Mr. Chair, because I do feel the next 60 to 90 days you're going to see that. I do sense a bit of frustration between the council and the properties corporate, and I understand that. But I think you'll see over the next 30, 60, 90 days, this totally progress. Everybody's singing off the same sheet of music, and we're definitely poised for the location and opportunity to make good things happen for economic development.
Totally agree. Thank you, Mr. Price. So, Ms. Capps, I think we're good putting this on the consent agenda for the 4th.
And do you need a motion for that?
Not here. Just as everybody's in agreement, we're good.
I'm in agreement with it.
Okay, yes. Everybody's good with that. All right, that will bring us to item 7, I believe, discuss partial demolition at 599 Airport Road. Mr. Blevins?
He is.
Okay, come, sorry, I hadn't seen you, Mr. Blevins.
They're in the corner.
Mr. Chairman, anywhere you want me to sit?
Wherever. You can, there's plenty of chairs on the Board of Education's left.
Okay, thank you. Felt like I was in the batter's circle.
On deck, sir.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Board members, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. Thought we had a PowerPoint, some photos. Again, the technology, we're having to move down here to the lower floor, switch things up.
Just need to bring in one of those projectors in here, they portable. Yeah.
Perfect. So one of the reasons I put this on there, because that particular hangar that we're talking about, 599, is actually the one you see to the farthest right. That's the hangar that's the county purchased. And perfect, thank you. And so it was ideal. It's a good slide for it. So it gives you a sense of what's going on. Front row. Oh, there we go. Okay. Make sure I'm on the right page. So the hangar was purchased in April of 21. Within the hangar is a 1,200 square foot all wood improvements, this office and storage. They were added during Warren Investments tenure there. They've been there. They were there quite a long time. From as far as we know, it was never permitted, and it does not meet building code. Certainly not now. We did confer with Development Services, asked the inspector to come out and just take a quick look at it and give us some idea of how to use it. And the one thing that came up was we needed the 1 hour wall separation for fire for protection. In this particular case, it goes from the floor all the way to the ceiling in order to protect that area and keep it occupant safe. Additionally, there is interior work that's needed because it's fairly old, pretty beat up. That would need to be to lease it out. So the storage, or the 1,200 feet considered, has a 12 by 14 storage, a 19.5 by 14 office, 11 by 8.5 foot storage, tool area, and then 2 restrooms. At this time, I mean, neither tenant in one particular agreement specifically says no office space, but neither tenant has shown an interest in leasing that space as it is. Again, the estimated cost of a 1 hour installation is $24,400. And the estimated cost for demolition is $13,740. We did a straw poll for the Jetport committee via email, and it came back that most of the members approved demolition. And again, the staff thinks that it was approximately 1,150 square foot for additional storage if we demoed it. So I just wanted to give a couple of quick photos and comment on them. There's a couple of things I took here. If you see the whole big picture where the flag is, it is that structure. Again, it's all wood. The photo to the right, I took that because you see all the red lines. Those are water lines. They installed a water heater on the outside of the facility and that sink, and then the water lines run throughout the structure in different places on the outside. Again, like I said, didn't meet any codes. They were just tacked up. There on the top, I got a couple more photos of the images. If you look to the bottom right, you'll see a long line of HVAC. We looked at the date of it, and it's approximately 15 years old up there. And then they did some modifications. In fact, they put some, on that return, they put some vents to the top to try to cool and heat the hangar. The hangar's insulated, but I don't think it would matter because it's a fairly small unit. And again, that's another photo of it. That's the HVAC that's on the top. And again, the modifications they made. And then what I did was try to take a photo from one end of that structure on the top that's generally used as some storage. And of course, we don't know the capacity of putting storage up there. But anyway, it's all wood. And then you can see it's got an additional step that goes back to the other side of the hangar. Again, I was just emphasizing the water lines. In fact, we discovered an actual garden hose that went from our supply of water out the side of the hangar to the next hangar. So we cut that off a long time ago, but I just remember thinking about that. I don't know how they worked it out. And then I took the restroom there to the right, and it's hard to see it on here. I tried to get it, but the floor's coming up. It would need to be redone. And then this is an office space with the bathroom and a closet. That's the first office with that bathroom right off of it. Again, I got a little bit of better photo. An interesting piece is the second bathroom. I don't know if you really can tell it by these photos, but that was a shower that was installed. They cut a hole through the wall and sucked that shower in there, and then never hooked it up to the plumbing. So the water went out the back of the hangar. And I'll be honest with you, for years I kept getting complaints there was water out there standing. I couldn't figure out what it was. Once we got inside, we realized what that was. Of course, we disconnected it already. Again, just more to storage. Some of the big storage there where you see the oil there, we're using it right now for some of our oil. And again, a small little storage there with the shelves. And I was just giving another one. This is the other bathroom. It's got a little bit better floor, but still needs some work. And then you see the air conditioner on the other side. I do remember going in there when Mr. Warren had it, and his mechanic was living out of this area here, which is obviously not allowed on the airport anyway, but he was living back there, and that's the reason they put the shower in. So I'll get to that next one in just a second. When considering the demolition, again, the staff recommended it, and then we had a discussion, and I honestly at the time had forgotten about it, but we'd had a discussion when we were talking about the terminal building and construction, and you need a temporary terminal to house the operations. And so during that time was discussed, but a couple of things that are an issue with that hangar using it is that you would have to, when you have a terminal, you have to have public access. And you have to have it from the land side and from the air side. So the hangar's not situated where you could have that really easy. You'd have to do some modifications. We don't think ADA would be grandfathered for us. We think it would be required because it's a public building. So we would have to build sidewalks. We'd have to cut another door in the hangar, either on the side or in the back, in order to gain access. Because now the only access you have is going to the front through the hangar doors, and then walking through by aircraft and getting to those office space. So having said that, and one of the other things that we have to consider is that you really don't think about it. It's a small parking lot we have now. So we have to develop another parking lot for no matter what we do, we're going to still have to do that. So I just wanted to share this drawing, which was a design for the site improvements for the hangar, or for the terminal. And as you can see, it's the planning was to house a temporary terminal almost through that gate when you're coming down Airport Road. If you look to the left, you'll see a small gate. And then we would develop a parking lot, which is sorely needed. As you can tell when you go up there to the airport, everybody's parked alongside their hangars in places that are not really parking. So we thought that was a good option. And then you'd have to bring in a trailer, whether it's construction, and notice the sidewalks and the entrance to the trailer in order to be ADA compliant. And so this was part of the site improvement drawings and planning we did originally. And so having, the discussion about getting funding for that terminal, I thought the board needed to be aware that we did have this plan in place, and that it may help you make the decision on whether you want to demo it and or hold off until the planning and then go back to it. So anyway, if you have any questions, I'm definitely available for that.
Barry, what is the length of time, the estimated length of time for construction that we would have to lease a trailer?
Approximately a year.
A year?
Yep. Yep.
And I know it's premature because we haven't even bid the project out yet.
That's correct.
Do you have any idea what a trailer rental would cost at this point?
I'm sorry, we did have an estimate. We don't have an estimate now, but we did have an estimate for a couple of years ago.
All right, could y'all get that for us?
Yes, sir.
I think that would be helpful for the board to have that number as to what we're looking at.
I think we need that number before we make a decision on this proposal.
I agree.
That's fair enough.
Therefore, I would move that it be tabled until we get, well, two things. One, the advisory committee would like to have an opportunity to discuss this. And second of all, until we get, I'd like to see a cost to use the hangar versus the cost to bring in a mobile trailer, office trailer.
Yeah, we have the cost to do the demo and then see what we need to do to put in sufficient partitions or whatever to make it a temporary office.
Right.
So Barry, if you could do that, so that would be an additional cost to the demolition part. Because what I'm hearing you say is we really can't use what we've got.
In its current capacity, no.
Well, I mean, water hoses attached to the wall, I know, I'm not a builder, but I know you can't do that. And then I agree with Commissioner Weatherspoon, I think we do need to do a cost comparison. That's why I asked you what it would take to rent the trailer.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table this until our work session on October the 26th.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. What we need to do is just schedule that on our work session for.
Yeah, I think, and I think before we have the work session, obviously we'd like to get all these numbers, and then we'd like to take it back to the airport
Right.
advisory commission, board, and let them make a recommendation to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. When does the advisory committee meet again?
October.
October, you remember?
The third Thursday, yes.
Third Thursday.
So then we could get y'all scheduled
21st.
shortly thereafter.
October 21st. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And we have a work session after that on 27th, so let's put that
That
on
works.
the 27th. That agreeable with everyone, Commissioner McCoy?
Yeah.
Commissioner Nichol, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Witherspoon?
I think the date on our work session is the 26th, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, forgive me, I'm on September. October 26th, yeah. Problem with technology. And you answered a question I was going to ask about temporary terminal. I guess we still have quite a bit of discussion to be had on that. On the parking, do you know how many parking spaces would that create, and how much of an increase would that be over what we have now? And you may not be.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, we're gonna demo the parking lot over there. While it's construction, you can't use it anyway.
Right.
And then to meet development services codes, I think we're at almost 100 lots on the new one.
Okay. So the new one would be about 100 lots. And that would accommodate our airport staff, economic development staff,
Visitors,
events, pilots, events, good. That's what I need to know.
but I'll definitely get the number.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll
And
get the number
I knew you
back.
might not have that, but I was curious about that because you were right. We have very little parking out there.
Very
at the
little,
present time,
yeah.
So, I understand.
And again, that was one of the reasons why that was so attractive at the time, was to build that parking lot so we could use it afterwards.
Yeah.
However, we may still, if the board decides to use the hangar, then we still have to build a parking lot of some sorts.
Gotcha. Yep.
Now, Barry, looking at that diagram, if you had to in the future, it looks like you could come to the left and extend that new parking lot out to the left. Am I
That's
right?
correct. That's correct. I've always envisioned almost a whole parking lot back there because you can't develop it anymore.
Yeah, you can't do anything else with it.
Only thing you have is, we had a gas line there, but that's been abandoned. So
Yeah.
that spot there is perfect for it to
Yeah.
develop as a parking lot.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this matter? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Appreciate that. We will discuss that again on October 26th work session. Okay, next item is discuss a request to schedule a public hearing on the 5311 Community Transportation Program, which provides our rural transit systems, the grant funding involved. Mr. Blevins, you want to speak on that?
Yes, I can introduce it, and Mr. Smith is here if there's any other additional questions on the technical side. But this is an annual requirement for us to apply for 5311 and 5307 dollars, which we have available through our work with FAMPO. And then, of course, while we're there, we'll mention the ROPE, the Rural Operating Access Funds. And then the main part of the public hearing, though, is to apply for the 5311. And essentially, it's an open a public hearing to get public comments on our system and how we move that forward. Again, the administrative portion, there's two spots. There's administrative, and then there's capital improvements for the system. So we fund 4 positions, which is the manager, transit services assistant, senior admin support specialist, and a processing assistant 3 that's working the office. And then some of the other things we have to do is we have to drug and alcohol test frequently, and so a lot of that covers that piece of it. The capital is that we want to replace 5 transit vehicles, and generally, what those are replaced by the mileage. When you get to a certain point, you start replacing them, and so that'll be the new request. And again, let me back up. I apologize. It's actually for 23 fiscal year 23 application. So the total cost right now is going to be total grant request will be $730,000. And then we have local matches. The total local match is $91,593. But generally, we were going to request that on the 18th. The DOT put this out real quick, the application. I think Larry could tell you that they do that on quite often, and most of the systems could not get a public hearing done. So, Larry, you have anything else to add?
No, Barry, you pretty much covered everything other than that the public hearing is a requirement for the county to have to apply and receive the funding. That's the only thing you didn't mention.
Thank you. Any, Commissioner McCoy?
For the benefit of the public, when you're talking about community transportation programs, that does include HARTs, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. That's what we're talking about, HARTs. My apology.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to make
Thank
sure
you.
that the public understood that we're talking about the HARTs transportation and adding more to that, which is very much needed. So.
But I think y'all can see too that these grants are absolutely critical to running this system. If it weren't for these federal and state grants, we couldn't do it.
Cannot.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we're getting a lot of funding into the county. Can you tell us exactly where the funding is coming from?
For this
For
program?
this project, yeah.
This is actually funneled from FTA,
Okay.
block grant to the state, and the state DOT funnels it out to the
Well,
systems.
tell them what FTA stands for.
Oh, I'm sorry, Federal Transportation Administration.
Okay. So that's
a
federal
good question.
highway money.
That and the FAA falls under that, so
Good.
that's a good question.
Thank you for
I do want to add one more
adding that
comment.
information. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. So the board approved us to pay our drivers more money. So I wanted to kind of give you an update on that. So we just closed out on our first full-time positions. We had 6 applicants, and all 6 look good already. And then our part-time was not closed out yet, but Larry looked at it this morning and said we have 16 applicants. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So that's made a big difference. So
Versus
we appreciate
0.
the board's help on that.
Great. So just so I understand, so we have no vacancies on full-time. Is that right?
They're still vacant, Mr. Chairman, but I am hiring this week. So we're doing interviews and everything. So hopefully by the end of the week, they'll be filled.
Very good. Very good. Well, that's good to hear. Anyway, I'll leave that alone. I wish that could apply to bus drivers because we raised our salary and we're still struggling. So, but
I understand that.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Smith or Mr. Blevins? Okay, thank you for sharing that. Let's put that on the agenda then for the 4th, so we can have the public hearing for the purpose of being able to,
Mr. Chairman, that'll be the 18th,
on the 18th.
your next meeting. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, our next meeting is the 4th.
So you want that on the 18th?
Yes,
Not the 4th?
Yes, sir. Yeah, because it was the night meeting, and we were trying to get it in earlier, but,
We need 10 days to advertise.
right.
Okay.
Okay. And that is a requirement, right?
All right.
That is
Sounds
correct.
For the
good.
grant, okay.
It's on the 18th, Ms. Capps. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Item number 9, we want to remove that. The reason being that that particular change order is absolutely necessary because of the moving the AWAS. We want a little more time to confirm the amount of the change order, because that has to do with how much cubic yards they need. So when are you going to have that?
Well, I'm hoping to have it sometime this week. However, the contractors are reviewing it now to make sure it meets their requirements.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest this. If you want, we'll have Barry go over that now and explain what the change order is for. And then if we have the number by Monday, we could go ahead with that if you're in agreement, because we need to move on that. So with your permission, we'll have him go ahead and make the presentation, but I wanted y'all to understand, the way it currently stands, we would not have it on for the 4th. But it's something we could add if y'all are in agreement to do that once we have the pricing.
Any problems with that, anyone? Okay, let's do this, and let's go ahead and plan to include it on the 4th. If we don't have that information at that time, we'll just remove it from the agenda and move it to the 18th.
Okay.
Okay?
Barry, you want to
Sure.
go over what it's for?
Okay, this change order is for the AWAS. The site was chosen, the FAA was invited back out, the person that does the commissioning, and he asked us to move it up 2 feet. So they're having to move dirt for 2 feet to raise it up 2 feet, and then to build the road up to the runway. And essentially, right now it's estimated at $30,600, of course, with a 10% match with us, or with the county. DOT's already signed off on it. It's just a matter of getting the numbers straight. And again, Precision Approach has that. Everybody else is in agreement, but they're still looking at their numbers.
Okay. You got I think you got a map there, don't you? It's on that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, that's the drawing of it. Again, it's raising it up. It's putting additional pipe in there to run the water straight out to the south side. So this is if you're looking at this, you're looking down on it, but towards the east is where the terminal's at, and then the AWAS is on that pad at the bottom. So once this is done and it's installed and we get power to it, it should commission pretty quick.
Any questions for Mr. Blevins? Comments? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Appreciate that. We'll take action on that once the final information comes in. Okay. Next item is discuss the DSS teleworking request. Mr. Polinsky.
You want to just sit there? You want to just sit right there?
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Paul Polinsky. I'm the director of Harnett County DSS. And I would like to bring to the attention of the board and ask the request that they allow us to continue to telework. Currently, we have a plan that we talked about starting in August of 2021. Since August of this year, we've had 11 employees up to this time. We've had 11 employees test positive with COVID. And 2 of those employees spent several weeks in the hospital, and 1 is actually not back in the office yet. But during that time, we've also had 26 employees that have had to quarantine at home due to being contacts with someone who tested positive for COVID. I met with my management team and we came up with a plan and where we would have an A team and a B team. Team A would telework 1 week, and then the next week Team B would telework and Team A would be back in the office. So basically we're rotating every other week. This would continue to allow the agency to be open from 8 to 5. It's not going to interfere with any of the services that we provide. Currently, we're seeing all of our clients that come into the office. We have a front desk that has 6 windows. We have 3 windows assigned for individuals or for our workers to see clients. So we're not bringing individuals actually back into the office. There are maintenance during COVID, maintenance built partitions that allows for confidentiality. We've actually had several clients come into the office that have been COVID positive, and they have not notified us until after they've received services, and then we had to basically close the office for an hour, get maintenance to come and clean and spray. So we came up with a plan to try to help our employees feel safe at work. And I wanted this plan to run through September through the end of October. At the end of October, we'll monitor our numbers and see what they are at that time. Hopefully the numbers will decline. But we're running into more and more positive cases as we go out and make home visits, whether it's Child Protective Services. We're actually removing babies due to whatever reason. Those babies are positive. And then we bring them into a foster home that is willing to care for that child. And sometimes those foster parents become positive due to trying to look after those individuals or look after that child. And then I have social workers that are going out to adult care facilities, or they're doing monitor or investigating adult protective services reports in the community. Right now we have 3 adult care homes that have positive cases in their facilities. So what we're trying to do is protect our staff. We have 198 employees at DSS, and we have about 50 employees that are participating in this plan. So any week we have 50 employees that would be teleworking. So it's only a quarter of our staff that are actually doing that. During the last COVID period, during 2020, it worked great for us. We were able to meet the mandated numbers set forth by the state that we were to perform. We have to produce or keep a certain amount of applications produced. They have to be, what's the word I'm looking? It just lost the tip of my mind.
You're too young for that.
We have to complete a certain number of applications. It's actually 95%. And we have been able to meet those numbers. In our food stamp cases, we have to complete at least 90%. So we're able to meet those numbers. We're very grateful that we have a good IT department. Along with IT, we have the ability to telework at home. Plus, we have our NC Fast system. We have our Northwoods Compass system, our day sheet system, and this system produces weekly reports, and it's the responsibility of the supervisors to monitor those reports, and then they can see if somebody's not producing or not. And if they're not, then they are brought back into the office. So my board, the DSS board, actually approved this for us to telework on August the 31st, and I would like to ask this board to also to support that as well. I think it's working great now, but if you've got any suggestions or any concerns, I'll be glad to address those.
Well, I think you answered my question or addressed my concern, and that was going to be that we will still be able to provide the customer service for our citizens that need it.
Yes, sir.
We won't fall down in that area. Protective services, whatever, is still going to be able to continue, because I well know a lot of members in our population, they're just not, either don't have the capacity, the connection, the equipment, or not comfortable with the online services and
Right.
need to have
Yes,
somebody
sir.
to talk to. So
Yes, sir.
You think we're good there? We're not.
I know
gonna
we're
suffer.
good. Actually, since we opened back up in June, we actually have less clientele coming into the office now. I guess it's the younger population. You can go online through NC
Right.
Fast or whatever and apply for services, and we're seeing an increase in those numbers. But
Yeah,
yes,
that-
sir,
Excuse
the
me.
lobby's open, and we're not limiting services in any way.
Good. And that's one thing that this has done is has forced some of us dinosaurs to have to make that adjustment to more
Yes, sir.
online things. So I agree. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Polinsky on this matter?
I have a question.
Commissioner McCoy?
Is there a requirement that, the public wear masks? No.
No, ma'am. I've asked that our employees wear masks, but the public are not, they're not required to wear masks because the county does not have a mandate.
Okay.
But I believe you're one of the departments that's still under the governor's executive order, aren't you?
Right, yeah, us and the health, yes, sir.
You want to explain that?
Because we fall under the Office of State Human Resources, us and the Health Department, and the governor still requires that state offices wear masks, then I have stated that I want my employees, as long as they're in the office, in the hallways, making home visits, that they wear masks. If they're in their own office space, they can remove that, and we're continuing to do that as needed.
Just to refresh the board's memory, and I think I remember them all, it's DSS, Public Health, Hearts, and the Jetport. They would fall under that executive order from the governor.
Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Wood. Yes. Is this something we need to formally approve, Mr. Wood?
I think so,
Okay.
because when you voted to come out of the mask requirement,
Right.
you made it clear too, you wanted everybody back at work as soon as possible. And so we've tried to do that. I did administratively approve for a short time for Steve's clerical people to basically close the main lobby there and try to do everything through the driveway. But we did have a little bit of blowback on that. And so he's back to being fully open now. But he had lost 4 out of how many clerical people?
12.
4 out of 12. So he was down a third of his people.
Right.
And at that point, we were concerned that we were going to lose even more of them. And so I did make that decision administratively. But once I was informed we had some blowback on that, I went to Steve. We're out of that now. So my feeling is any of these requests now, if it's a large situation, or it's going to impact, as you said, whether or not people can have direct access or not, then I'm going to bring those back to you specifically as an exception to your existing rule, if that's agreeable with the board.
It's agreeable with me. I can't speak for the rest of the board. The rest of the board feel good with that direction. Commissioner McCoy?
I agree, because the safety of our employees as well as the safety of our citizens is very, very important.
Right.
And that's why we need to protect both.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree.
Thank you.
And I think Paul's come up with a good plan.
Very good.
That does that, that balances that. And as you pointed out, people will still have access, full access to the building if they want to come in and meet a person face to face.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Capps, will you put that on our agenda for the 4th, please, ma'am? Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Polinsky.
yes, sir.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Paul.
Next, recommendation on water and sewer allocation policy. Mr. Wood and Mr. Ward.
Yes, sir. Melissa, can you put the memo up there, please? And if you'd go ahead and go to the 3rd page, which is the chart. And can we flip that where we can read it?
This computer doesn't have PDF.
You can go up to view and flip it.
Do what?
You can go up to view and flip it.
I think,
Can't you go to view and flip it?
up above to the far left.
Yeah, go to view and rotate view up.
There you go.
There you go. Now go down to that. Should be good. There you go.
Okay. And can we blow that up as much as possible? Because I know a lot of folks back here probably having a little trouble seeing it. Can y'all see that? Okay. Okay, very good. And so that's Exhibit A, and we'll come to that as we go through this. Several of the commissioners have asked us to look at our allocation policy. These are capacity allocations. Primarily what we're going to be dealing with is in our plants. But just to refresh your memory, as we talked about before, when we go to do a water or sewer allocation for an individual, when Steve is looking at a development, what he has to be assured of is, let's take sewer for instance, not only do we have to have capacity in our wastewater treatment plant to treat it, we've got to have capacity in the sewer lines to get it there. And some of those lines would also have pump stations, so that when the elevation gets too low, you've got to bring it back up, you got to elevate it up and then start over with the gravity flow. So we're going to be talking principally about treatment plant capacities, but I just want y'all to keep in mind that as we look at individual developments, we may have capacity in a plant. For instance, you have plenty of water plant capacity, but if you don't have the lines and the booster pumps and overhead storage tanks in order to have enough pressure and volume, then we would still have a problem with that allocation, okay? So let me just go through this memo. I think the best thing to do, I know it's a little boring, but for the benefit of those who haven't gotten it early, and I believe everybody should have gotten it on Thursday afternoon, is that correct? I think that's when Melissa sent it out. I wanted you to have time to read through it. So just to refresh everybody's memory, new legislation was adopted by the North Carolina General Assembly in June of 2020, effective on January 1, 2021. And that legislation forbade cities, counties, and water authorities from requiring a subdivision developer to pay for water and sewer system development fees at the time the water provider allocated capacity in its plants and lines and pump stations. So that's when they used to have to pay for it. When you gave them the allocation, they had to pay for it on the front end. This saved developers hundreds of thousands of dollars in front end cost. If the developer sold his lots to one or more home builders, then the fee payments fell on them, the home builders, and not the developer. So the developer could develop his subdivision and never have to pay those capacity fees if he sold them out to a home builder. However, if the developer was also the home builder, then the development fees would fall on the developer, but not until he got a building permit to construct the house. So that could defer his cost for 1 or more years, depending on how big the development was and how long it took to actually get building permits and construct the houses. Prior to that legislation, developers had to pay the system development fees when they received the allocations. So that was the difference in the state law. And you had until January 1 of 2021 to come into compliance with that new state law. So this change highly incentivized developers to get water and sewer allocations as soon as possible, particularly since many cities and counties have limited plant, line, and pump station capacities. Again, when they get the allocations, there is no cost to them for tying up that capacity. Consequently, without any restrictions, it would lead to quickly allocating the remaining capacities in our water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plants, sewer lines, and pump stations. We are already seeing developers push to get larger numbers of lot allocations. In response to the new legislation, the county amended its water and sewer ordinance on November 20, 2020 to to be effective on January 1, 2021, again, meeting the new legislation statutory deadline. That policy change placed a cap of 100 lot allocations in a subdivision at a time. The developer or home builder paid when the building permit is issued per that new state law. And he could get another 100 lots when 50% of the first 100 lots building permits have been issued. So in other words, he would get 100 lots. Once he had gotten building permits for 50 and was moving forward with that, he could request another 100. So at that point, he would basically have 150 in inventory. This allocation cap is tied to phases of development. And what we're going to propose to you is that we not tie it to phases of development, because that's been one of the issues for developers. There is currently no time limit for the developer builder to use the lot allocation. So that's your current policy, and that's what you asked us to review. And we've done that and have a recommendation to you. Our records show that from July 2019 to today, about 26 months, we've had 45 requests for water and or sewer capacity allocation permits. Of that number, only Woodcroft subdivision at 230 lots has exceeded 200 lots. But now we are getting requests for 1,200 lots, and that's Serenity. Coley's been working with a developer that wants 1,000 lots. And then we even have 2,800 lots, which is the Serenity project inside the city of Lillington. That's the one, as you recall, where you ceded over your zoning and subdivision regulation authority for part of that over to Lillington, so it would develop under one jurisdiction. So some larger developers feel the new policy puts a burden on them. They can't do multiple phases simultaneously. And as Coley has said, that what a lot of them want to do is they will do some that are single family with larger lots. They want to do some that are smaller lots or condominiums and all. So what they would like to do is get an allocation of the water or sewer, but be able to use it in any part of their development and not be tied to a phase, okay? Let's see. So the other problem they have is they cannot sell large numbers of lots at one time to large national home builders. As you recall, we discussed this issue with Doug Bean, the retired director of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Utilities Department, and CMUD had and continues to wrestle with this same issue. Now, when we met with them, as y'all know, I sent y'all an email saying we were going to do that. 3 of you were not able to attend that because it would have been a full quorum. But the chairman and the vice chairman were in that session with our staff, and we had sent Mr. Bean some detailed questions prior to the meeting to facilitate that discussion. And so we felt like we had a good detailed discussion with him. I think it went on for about 2 hours. And we pretty much addressed a lot of the critical issues in this type of policy. So we were trying to do some research there on how to develop this. In looking at this matter, you need to be aware of our available wastewater treatment plant, pump station, and sewer line capacities, and water treatment plant, water distribution lines, storage tanks, and booster pump capacities as well. And that's what I was saying earlier, that when we do an allocation, we have to make sure that every component along our system, whether it's water or whether it's sewer, can handle what it is they need on water or what it is they're sending to us on sewer. So if you look at the spreadsheet of Exhibit A on the following page, and that's what I have up here, you can look at the top part, and this should be familiar to you. We've gone over this before, but I just want to start the discussion today by reiterating exactly where we're at, okay? So the Harnett Regional Water Treatment Plant you can see that, let's take the top line first. Harnett Regional Water has an allocation capacity of 16.5 million gallons a day. You're only using 7.2 million gallons a day. So you have about 9.3 million gallons a day available to you as Harnett Regional Water, okay? You'll notice that this town or city of Holly Springs went out and got 10 million gallons a day, and they're only using 2.7. But they were anticipating a tremendous amount of growth, but they have tied up an awful lot of capacity there. Then you have Fort Bragg, who has 8 million, but they use about 2.3. Should point out there, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the issues there is, as y'all know, that's the largest military installation for the United States Army. And they get about half their allocation from Fayetteville, they get about half from us. But given the highly sensitive nature of that, they want to make sure that they have full redundancy. And so that means they're using over 4 million gallons a day combined, but they want to make sure if something happens in Fayetteville, they can get fed 100% by us. If something happens in Harnett, they can get 100% fed by Fayetteville. So I just wanted to point that out to you. If that looks high, that's why it's high.
And let me point out, that's kind of misleading when it says 2.3 because we rotate supplying them. So Fayetteville will supply them 4.6 million gallons one day, and then we won't supply any, and then the next day we'll supply them 4.6. So 2.3 is the average, but you know, on those days we might be doing 20 million gallons a day in the plant. And even in the summer, we might be doing 25 or 29 million gallons in the plant, depending on if it's hot or dry or something like that. So you have to prepare for those peaks, but those are just average numbers up there.
Right. And then Moore County has 3 million gallons, they're at 1.1. Johnston County at 2.5, they're at 1.2. Fuquay-Varina is at 2, and they're at 1.5. And that's why they're vitally interested in whether or not you move forward with your new water treatment plant on the north side of the river. Because both they and Angier are looking for additional water, okay? So that's the water situation, which a total of 42 million gallons a day. We only use 16 million gallons a day. As Steve said, that is an average, okay? But basically you're in good shape on the water plant. Now, whether you can get the water to a particular development depends on where it is, what size lines feed it, and whether or not we have booster pumps that can push the water up there, and then storage tanks in the right place to have the pump get the water up into the tower and then have adequate pressure and volume. So is everybody clear on that? So the water plant is not an issue for you. Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. You have over 9 million gallons a day reserved for Harnett County. So now the issues with sewer capacities are far more restricted. The area of most rapid growth and anticipated growth is in the northern and northwestern sections of the county. Now, I know we're going to have more growth on 87 as well, but until we're able to get some additional sewer lines out there, that's going to be restricted. But you could add that Highway 87 general area into this too. That will also be an area of high growth once they get some more lines in the ground over there. So unfortunately, as Exhibit A shows, and that's at the bottom, this is the North Harnett. And Melissa, could we pull that up a little bit to where that's the only thing on the screen? That's good. Okay. So here's where we're at there. The Harnett wastewater treatment plant that serves that area is 5.6 million gallons a day of actual flow, to a wastewater treatment plant with 7.5 million gallons a day of capacity. Does everybody see that at the bottom line? Going totals over, allocated capacity is 7.5. That's the size of your plant, okay? The current usage, meaning this is the average daily flows, and I stress again, these are averages, because particularly when we have very wet weather, a lot of rainy weather, we have 2 or 3 of these jurisdictions have terrible infiltration and inflow problems. And that's why I've recommended to you that when we get into these urban service district agreements and into the capacity, into the agreements on the addition to the wastewater treatment plant, that you include some language in there that says they have got to address those I&I problems. Because if they don't, while this says they have that allocation, they're going to constantly cut into, to be honest, our allocation. Because on these wet days, they're going to be, the flow is coming. I mean, one thing I got to stress about a wastewater treatment plant, there is no shut-off valve. The stuff is coming. You know, you can shut down a water plant. You know, all you can do on a wastewater treatment plant is bypass. And when you bypass, the state gets on you pretty heavy. So I just wanted to stress that again, when we do those agreements, we really need to have some sort of language in there that says they've got to reach, not exceed a certain level of peak flow, okay?
Do we have any of that language in what we currently have with these communities?
There's some inflow and infiltration language in there. You know, the other side to that argument is they pay us for that inflow and infiltration because it's metered. So it's kind of a warped sense, but you understand what I mean? We get compensated for that inflow and infiltration. So, which it's always better environmentally and for the towns and for us to address those issues. On the other hand, the metering is kind of an offset to that because those communities, if they don't address those issues, we as the treatment provider benefit from the excess revenue.
Yeah, and all of that is true. And I agree with that 100%. Where it becomes critical is when your plant is close to being allocated out, then you may get more money, but you're also going to have fines from the state.
Yeah, I don't want us to get, well, if at all possible, I'd prefer we not get to a position where we have issues like, you know, another community in our county has.
That's right.
Because of too much I&I.
And actually, one of those up there, I won't get into that,
Right.
has as bad or worse a situation.
Yeah.
They're just not under a moratorium. Okay. So on the north, let's go through them individually. Harnett County, this is our allocation, has 2.62 million gallons a day out of that 7.5 million gallon a day plant, okay? So in other words, we have 35% of the plant capacity. Current usage is averaging 2.5 million gallons a day. That's what we're averaging coming into our plant. So as you can see, we're close to being full on that. We have that NYT, if you look at the footnote, the plant is operating at 75% capacity on a daily basis. When the 80% usage threshold is reached, North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality will require expansion plans, and at the 90% usage, the expansion construction should be underway. NYT stands for Not Yet Tributary, is a planning tool to show future capacity allocation needs. HRW has submitted a capital project ordinance to begin plant expansion. So if you remember, you've approved that. You've also approved for them to get with Hazen and Sawyer and go through our permitting process and an preliminary engineering report, which will give you an estimated cost, but also lay out a rough design of the plant. Steve, do you want to say anything about that beyond that?
Well, one thing, it's not Hazen and Sawyer who's
I'm
doing
sorry.
that work. It's McGugan by Design out of Conway, South Carolina, who's doing that work. But regardless, everything else you said is true. We're going through the process now, trying to get speculative limits and the permitting started with the state. Like everything else now, that process is slow because of COVID. They've got staffing issues. So, but that is beginning in earnest. So hopefully we'll know how to design going forward and be able to get permitted here relatively quickly. But that all depends on how fast DEQ can give us the permits back.
Are they still all working remotely, or?
I think it's a mixed bag. Yeah, some of them are working in the office. I think most of them are still remote. And they've got very few permitters because that's a real technical end of what they do. And those engineers are in a lot of demand from private industry and tech firms now. So it's hard for them to keep staff. So I'd say their staffing levels are really low, but we're poking and prodding as hard as we can to try to get an answer as quickly as possible.
Very good.
So going back to Harnett County then, we currently are using 2.5. The NYT flow is 0.5. No, that's 500,000 gallons per day, okay? When you add the 2.5 and the 0.5, the current plus what you've allocated out is 3 million gallons a day. So that exceeds the 2.62 million gallons a day. So I wanted y'all to be aware of that. Technically, we've already allocated out our capacity in this plant. And that's why I wanted to talk, and we'll talk further about the plans on the new plant. So you say, well, how can we keep doing that? Well, the answer is some of the other people aren't using their allocations right now. So let's go through it. Fuquay-Varina has 2.6 million gallons a day in that plant. Basically what we've got, 35%. They're at 1.5, but they've already allocated out 0.65 million gallons a day because they're growing like a weed up there, as y'all know. And that's why they're back to us now wanting more capacity in your new plant. And so the current plus the not yet tributary is 2.15 out of a 2.6 million gallon plant. Now, back up a minute to Harnett on the last column. We're at 2.6. Our the additional capacity that we currently have preliminarily allocated out, none of this is in stone, because what Steve has to wait on is to see what we get permitted, and then we have to see if these partners can afford to do what they're asking for. And we'll go through that in a minute. But if it stayed like this, we would be up to 5.22 million gallons a day. And so we would have allocated out 3 million. We'd have 2.22 million gallons a day that you would have left to allocate out. And that's your new plant. That's including your new plant. Fuquay-Varina, like I said, they're at 2.15. They're asking for 3.4 million gallons a day, and that would take them up to 6 million gallons a day. Lillington is at 1.2. They're using 0.85. They have a little bit allocated out at 2/100ths. And so that takes them to 0.87 on a 1.2 million gallon plant. Now, what that means is they are very close to being allocated out. The major developments that they are looking at right now are going to be retail customers of Harnett County, and therefore it won't impact theirs. That will impact our allocations. But they will be our retail customers, so we will get the revenue off the water and sewer system, but it also means we'll be utilizing some of our capacity. So I wanted y'all to be clear about that when we're looking at Lillington and Angier. Sometimes the development will be on their system, sometimes it'll be on our system. So we have to differentiate those. So where we're at now, that's Lillington. Angier is at 1.08 million gallons a day. They're at 0.75. If you'll notice, they're at 0.55 NYT, which puts them at 1.3. So Angier is actually over allocated right now. And again, what's happening is Harnett and Angier are basically using allocations from Fuquay and Lillington that they're not yet using. And the one that's really bailing us out so far is Fuquay-Varina. But my concern about that is this new plant is going to take roughly 4 years to permit and develop. And Steve, you want to talk about that a little bit?
It's just that process, as I alluded to earlier, just getting through the permitting process and getting to bid. If everything goes great, the greatest we could probably hope for, the best expectation we could probably get to would be 2 years to start turning dirt. And in 2 years, it would take approximately 2 years to build that plant. So, I mean, that's just a fact.
So 4 years would be best estimate.
Absolutely, to be up and running from right now.
Okay.
That's the best I can see on the horizon unless something changes.
Does anybody have any questions on those allocations?
I have a question.
Commissioner Coy?
I don't know if it makes sense or not, but I'm trying to understand what you're saying based on the new legislature piece and all of that. And I think that I understand it as that the developers now are just, they're not handicapped as providing the water in the beginning of the contract, because they're gonna pass it on to the homeowners, is that not right?
Or the home builder?
The home builders?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now, what does that do because we have a lot of developers in this county. We have more and more every day. So I'm sitting here thinking about 2 to 3 years from now, and we continue to see the future grow here in Harnett County as it is growing. What does that do to our capacity of water?
Well, that's what I'm going to address in the rest of this.
Okay.
And
Another thing I want to say, so I don't take up all the time from everyone else that wants to speak. I think we have to take care of Harnett County first. That's going to be the main. I think should be the main goal. Because water is an element that you really need to sustain life. So we can't keep passing water. I mean, it's good to sell this water to these other counties because they need it. But we must keep in mind our own citizens here in this county. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm in complete agreement with that. So let me go further, and I think I will address a lot of your questions, Ms. McCoy, as we go through this. So the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality only considers actual flows in determining when a county must plan, then construct a plan. As that footnote we read earlier says, when you reach 80%, you should be in the planning stage. You're at 75%, and because of the rapid growth and because of the capacity levels we're at right now, Steve has already said, no, we need to be moving now. And so while we're only at 75% now, when you look at those allocations already and a 4-year construction time frame, we need to be moving as rapidly as we can, and you're doing that. You've already given him the go-ahead to do everything he needs to do on it. once we get the authorization to construct the permit, another process we have to go through is we get the authorization to do the permitting. Then we can have the engineer go to full design, plans, specifications, and bid documents, so we can go out. But during that process, what we've got to do then is sit down, and Steve has had discussions with all of these partners multiple times about what they want to see and that sort of thing. But then we've got to come down to, okay, the preliminary engineering report gives us an updated cost estimate. He's given you a cost estimate already, but that was an estimate. Now we're going to get down to, in today's numbers, has that changed significantly when they come back with it? The critical issue, one of the critical issues is can these, we know Fuquay can afford it. The question is, can Lillington and Angier afford it? Lillington wants 2 million gallons a day. His preliminary estimates right now is every million gallons is $6 million. So if you're asking for 2 million, that means the town of Lillington would need to do a bond issue for $12 million. And the question is, with today's limited number of ratepayers, don't look at their number of citizens. The issue is how many water customers are you going to spread that cost? And you know, normally on a bond issue, it'd be 20 years. If they got a USDA loan, it would still be 40 years. And that's the best they could do as far as lengthening the time frame going back. So second issue is Angier wants 1 million gallons a day, and that's $6 million on their rate customers. So I want you to be aware of that because we don't know if those will be the final numbers or not. Okay. So given that it's going to take 4 years to bring this plant capacity online, the first key issue is this. How quickly are the already allocated lots going to be constructed and occupied? So again, you go back to that fifth column, the NYT flow. There's 1.72 million gallons a day that we've already authorized. We've allocated that out, okay? So what I'm pointing out is, the first critical issue is, how quickly are they going to bring that on board? Because if they bring that on board, we're practically maxed out. We'd be at 7.32 versus 7.5. Now, let me say this. The state requires you to plan for 360 gallons per day. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way on the ground. So we might pick up some additional capacity there. But the way it's sitting right now, you're practically allocated out right now. So what you would be doing as we get into this new proposed policy is, I want everybody to be clear, we're actually going to be allocating out, in essence, that new plant, capacity in that new plant. Is everybody clear on that?
Let me say, with that non-yet tributary flow, most of our 500,000 gallons per day there is, you know, those aren't those big subdivisions that we're all here really talking about right now. None of those have been permitted yet. So this is just flow that's currently ongoing in the system that's permitted, you know, where somebody's got 150 lots here, you know, 75 lots there, that kind of thing. Let me say about Fuquay, if you've been there, those houses, I mean, that 0.65 is getting built. It's getting built right away, pretty quickly. And Angier's pretty much the same way. That flow in Angier that's allocated, at least half of that flow is, I mean, they're turning dirt, houses are going up, and that's happening. So not so much in Lillington, but so, you know, it can crescendo much above that 1.72 is what I'm trying to say if conditions maintain the way they are. I know there's supply chain issues with builders, there's labor issues with builders now, you know, all that kind of stuff, which could work in our favor a little bit to slow down, slow it down or moderate that growth somehow. But that's pretty, the 1.72 is definitely something we've got to be cognizant and wary of going through this 4-year building process.
Yeah. So I wanted to give, all of that is to give you background. That's where we're at today, okay? So again, the first key issue is how quickly will that be built out? According to what Steve just said, it could be fairly quickly.
I got a question. Where'd the 9 million gallons per day come from? And why are we not looking down the road? We're looking right now today.
Well, let me finish going through this, because that's one of the issues I'm talking about here, is whether or not you want to plan for more. Okay, so the second key issue is that during this 3 to 4 years construction time, you're being asked to issue still more water and particularly sewer plant allocations for new subdivision proposals. As mentioned above, you are now attracting national home builders, and that's the fundamental difference. Up until now, you've had smaller developers doing this, but now, as I mentioned before, we're getting requests for 1,200 lot subdivisions, a 2,800 lot subdivision, and a 1,000 lot subdivision. Our currently proposed capacity allocation in the wastewater treatment plant expansion is 2.6 million gallons a day, bringing Harnett's total capacity to 5.22 million gallons a day. Again, as the exhibit shows, Harnett County already has flows an NYT of 3.0 million gallons a day. So the proposed expansion would only give you 2.22 million gallons a day. We are not exceeding the 7.5 million gallons a day total plant capacity, only because some of these others haven't built out yet. But as Steve is telling you, the likelihood is they're going to before this 4-year period is up. Okay. The 3 subdivisions mentioned above, the 1,200, the 2,800, and the 1,000, if you add those up, that's 5,000 lots. If you multiply that by 360 gallons per day per lot, which is the state's planning number, okay, that would require an allocation of 1.8 million gallons a day. That's just for those 3 developments, if you were to do them totally over that period of time. That would leave only 0.42, or in other words, 420,000 gallons a day in available capacity in the expanded plant. So this would basically eat up the capacity in your expanded plant if you leave it at there. So that brings up the third key issue, which is, should Harnett County reconsider how this proposed plant's capacity is to be allocated among the county and the 3 cities/towns, and that goes to what Ms. McCoy was bringing up. And it also brings up the fourth key issue, which is what we're here really to discuss, and that is, how do we develop an allocation policy that caps allocation so that a few large developers don't come in and capture nearly all of the planned plant capacity? Do you want a policy that essentially will cut out the smaller developers/builders in order to accommodate a few large developers? In my view, there needs to be a reasonable balance to accommodate growth. So that's where we're at there, and that leads to the fifth discussion point, and that is what Commissioner Weatherspoon just brought up, and that is we need to look at how you're allocating out the 9 million gallons a day, and then we need to look at, based on growth trends, if we're going to have these large developments and still have plenty of additional capacity, do you in fact need to go with a larger plant right out of the chute? Instead of 9, maybe it's 12.
Well, I see where we can get 3.4 million gallons per day.
I mean, you're right, and let me say, a lot of that is going to change. So I wouldn't look at anything there set in stone. Like, for example, the 9 MGD expansion, that's based on what we think we'll need and what our partners will need and what they've requested. So what happens though, what's going to determine that is like right now when we go out for speculative limits, we're not asking for just 9 million gallons. We're asking for 15 million gallons. The state determines what they will give us. So if we're allowed to do 15 million and that's what we can work toward, we will. But keep in mind, if this goes from $6 a gallon to $10 a gallon, you're talking about $150 million for 15 million gallons. Where's the money coming from? Where's it going to come from? If we want 10 of it, we don't have $100 million to put in a plant where we're not going to get reimbursed for it, at least from the development side, until maybe 10 years down the road. Because we're only getting payback when they pull the permits. So that's why we're kind of trying to change the policy and look at it. But what I'm trying to say is none of that's set in stone, first of all. It could actually end up going less, believe it or not, in that if that cost gets up to $10 a gallon, you're right, Commissioner Weatherspoon, we will restrict what we allow other entities to get as far as those allocations and keep most of that for ourselves. But there's a cost-benefit analysis in there that we have to look at. There's a happy medium because if costs keep going up, and most of the bids I'm seeing now are 30 to 35% more than most estimates, and I mean current estimates, whether it's school construction, whether it's water and sewer line work, or whether it's plant work. So I'll give you an example. PwC's doing an expansion right now of their rockfish plant. They're adding 7 million gallons to that plant, taking it from 21 MGD to 28. $80 million is their estimate. That's not even their bid.
So that's where you're getting the 10 million.
Exactly. So that could come back at $10 a gallon. So that's you know, or much higher than that. It could come back at $100 million for 7 MGD. That's more than $10 a gallon. So that's my point. It can, whenever those numbers come back, there's going to be moment right there where we're going to have to say, you know, here's where the rubber meets the road. What are we going to do? What are we going to build based on our capabilities and our partners' capabilities? And a lot of things can change up until that point. So I would say it's fluid. So I wouldn't get caught up too much right now in what we're proposing as far as finite numbers or allocations, at least on the plant construction, because it's going to take some change. There's going to be some changes, I guarantee you. You know, like Mr. Wood brought up, what about the abilities of these towns to pay for this capacity? If it comes back at $10 a gallon, then suddenly, you know, Lillington's looking at $20 million, Angel's looking at $10 million. What if they can't pay? You know, what happens? Do we want to assume that the other $3 million, or maybe we just want $1.5 million of it? You know, those kind of questions. If we go to an urban service area concept, which I don't want to get too much into that right now, you know, a lot of these big developments that we're talking about are going to be in the town of Lillington, or there's developments out there that could be in the town of Anger, but we're going to serve them, so it won't go against their capacity. I think their requests are assuming that that would be part of our capacity. What I mean by that is Lillington may only want 1 million gallons, for example, not 2 million, because of that, if that changes, that concept on who's going to serve whom. And so there's a lot of things being floated around about that right now, because these towns are meeting with their financial advisors and they're saying, hey, is there another way to do this? You know, because a town that's got a $2 million budget to borrow $20 million is, you know, that's quite a step. That's like us borrowing $2 billion or something. So I mean, that's where I'm, you know, so a lot of things are fluid and are going to change. So I wouldn't get too caught up right now in what we're proposing to do where with this plant, because it's all going to change, I guarantee you.
And Steve, I just want to add to what you've already expressed. We haven't even thought about the fact that we're trying to change economic development and growth here. We are trying to bring more industry and more plants here for our citizens.
Right.
So we gotta think about how is that gonna play into the
That's right.
future of the water system here. So it's a serious issue.
Well, you're exactly right.
That was actually a concern I was just about ready to bring up is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we're discussing residential only at the moment. I mean, not even taking into account like line capacities or anything running out there as well. And do commercial, I mean, we're right on the cusp of working with economic development in order to get commercial and retail in here. And that's gonna be, that's our main focus. And correct me if I'm wrong, these companies actually look at capacity like before even considering coming here.
That's right.
So, I mean, that needs to be our number one priority as well.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah.
And I know in this, the picture that we're painting right now, we want to be realistic as possible because this capacity is finite. But when you look at a system like ours, the reason they're coming here is because we have capacity. If we didn't have capacity, we wouldn't have people wanting to build 8,000 lots 25 miles from Lillington and a plant. Nobody else can make that claim. So there's a reason why, you know, availability of land, price of that land, and the ability to serve those folks is what's making us attractive now for that residential development. So I just want to make that clear. We're in a lot better shape than a lot of folks. And so we're just trying to plan and prepare. And I'd say this, Ms. McCoy, our interest is always going to be in the county first. You know, it always has been and it will continue to be.
Okay, Melissa, if you could scroll up to where we get to South Harnett. Oh, I'm sorry, I said scroll up, scroll down. Okay, there you go. So before we leave, I just wanted to have you look at the second wastewater treatment plant that we have. That's the South Harnett wastewater treatment plant. This is a much better picture for you. Okay, that plant is already 15 million gallons a day. Harnett Regional Water has 5, Fort Bragg has 10. We've already talked about why Bragg's allocation is so high on the water side. It's the same thing on the sewer, okay? So of our 5 million gallons a day, our current usage is only 1.3, not yet tributary. In other words, already allocated out is 0.7. So when you add those together, we're at 2 million gallons a day on a 5 million gallon a day plant. So we have 3 million gallons a day of excess capacity down there. As we all know, we have some issues there about lines and pump stations. So, but the plant is in good shape, so on capacity wise. So I wanted to make that point with you as well. So now you should have a complete picture on where you are on water, where you are on the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant and the expansion of it, and then in the South Harnett wastewater treatment plant. Again, unfortunately, a large amount of the anticipated growth is going to be in the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant area, and that's the one where we have capacity issues in the plant, okay? So just wanted to make those points with you. So now we'll get to the last part of this. And Melissa, if you would now, if you would go to the last page, printed page. That's it right there, and then if we could flip it. Okay. And for the benefit of the folks sitting in the back here, if you could blow that up a little bit more. Can everybody see that? Okay. So where we're at, now we get to what you asked us to do. You had asked that the staff look at a possible amendment to the current policy. In reviewing the above information, the staff have developed this proposed policy change for your consideration. This policy recognizes that we have a very limited amount of wastewater treatment plant capacity left. I should have put in the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant, okay? The proposed policy changes would be made by amending the water and sewer ordinance on pages 28 through 30. The changes would be, well, I've just given you a summary here. Increase the number of lots in a development that can receive a water or sewer capacity allocation from 100 to 200. So you would double what you allow a developer to get now. If a separate agreement is requested for land subdivisions that exceed 200, and remember that the vast majority of our subdivisions are under 200. But if a separate agreement is requested for land subdivisions that exceed 200 lots, the developer or builder can receive up to an additional 200 lots, provided they agree to escrow the full fee amount for those additional lots. In other words, it's not mandatory. We're complying with state law on those first ones, the first 200. He does not prepay anything, which is in compliance with state law. What we're saying is it's his option. If he wants to go to a 400 lot situation, then he has to escrow the 2 additional. And the reason for that is because he's asking for far more capacity than anyone else is getting. And there needs to be some mechanism for limiting that and making sure that he's honest to God going to go forward and use it. And if he's paid that money, there's a higher likelihood he's going to use them. Okay. The escrowed lots shall be drawn down first, followed by the first 200 that were allocated. And the reason for that is until an escrowed lot is drawn down, we don't get any payment for it. And so, and plus, he's already escrowed it, so he's already put the money up. So we're just saying, go ahead and use those first, and then that's out of the way. 200 additional lot allocations may be requested when 50% of the 200 original lots building permits have been issued. If that occurs, the developer builder could have as many as 400 allocated, but not yet tributary lots in his inventory. Now, I think I've made an error there. It wouldn't be the 200 original lots, it would be the escrowed lots, because he'd be using them first. So, in other words, he has to use down 200 when he's, the 200 additional lot allocations may be requested when 50% of the 200 escrowed lots, building permits have been issued. So what that means is when he's used down 100 and he has 100 left, he can get another 200, okay? If that occurs, the developer builder could have as many as 400 allocated but not yet tributary lots in his inventory. And let me go ahead and make that correction before I forget it. So that is a far cry from where we're at now. That 400 at one time, the most he could do right now would be 150, because you give him 100, he has to get building permits for 50, and then he can request another 100. So the most he could have at any one time would be 150, okay, that are in the inventory. If at least 50% of the lot water or sewer allocations have not been drawn down, which means a building permit issued, within 4 years of the developer obtaining the authorization to construct permit to install the water and sewer infrastructure for the subdivision, Harnett Regional Water can rescind the remaining lots allocations. This protects the county from a developer who receives a lot of allocations but fails to build in a timely manner. This would free that capacity for a developer who is actually building within a reasonable time frame, not stockpiling allocations for future use. Our North Harnett wastewater treatment plant capacity is at a premium and needs to be allocated in a fair manner to active developers and builders. And I just want to reiterate, if you remember when we talked to Doug Bean, those of you who were in that meeting, he stressed that CMUD has a clawback provision like this if they don't use it. And for the same reason, because they had rapid growth going on, particularly in the suburban areas around them, Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, down on the southern end, Matthews, and those areas. And so they couldn't let a lot of capacity sit there being allocated out, but not being used. And so we're trying to create a same provision here. The 4 years, it generally would take a couple of years for them to build their infrastructure within the subdivision, install all of the water and sewer lines. That gives him an additional 2 years to go out and use the allocations that he's got, or some percentage thereof, so he doesn't lose them. And it actually gives him a little bit more than that. So anyway, that's basically the proposal we have for you. Now, some people may say, well, if we're as tight as it looks like we are, do we want to become more lenient? We still think there are some valid concerns there with the development community. We think allowing them more flexibility, and Coley, you might want to address this, where they want to do 3 different types of housing within a subdivision at one time. You want to address that?
Yeah, mainly planned urban development where you do multifamily, senior living, or other residential based on the density of that. That does have implications as far as the master planning of that and what you want to put into effect and how quick those particular items will come on board. So that's something you need to take in consideration because I think you're going to see more of that. And Commissioner Weatherspoon can speak to this, being a former mayor, myself being a former town manager. We knew this was coming. However, we didn't know this was going to be this fast and this aggressive in the sale of land and the density that's being supplied. I think one thing that you need to look at strongly is what Mr. Wood has done an excellent job of outlining this with the allocations of where we're at. The towns are going to be a key player in this as far as what they do, how they do it, and how quick they do it. So they're allocating out all of these lots, and most of them are R6, R7, R8, which is a small 6,000 square foot lot. That's what's going to eat up your capacity quite rather quickly. So it depends on how you want to see that master plan as far as what the county can do, and then working hand in hand. And Mr. Wood and Steve and I mentioned this, getting together with it, particularly Andrew and Lillington, to kind of look at this more on a regular basis and a routine basis. Right. It's not that Harnett County has plenty of capacity. You see where we're at right now, but I think we need to kind of hammer that home as far as kind of where we're at, what we're up against, and what the commissioners want to see as far as the growth corridors. I mean, obviously your top priority, as all of y'all mentioned, is economic development. The commercial and retail obviously is going to follow this, as you well pointed out. So that's something I think you need to be particular looking at as far as what you do with the land, the layout, the land use, and that's what Kathleen was kind of looking at as far as our strategy was concerned as far as putting this together as well. So you don't want to eat up all of that capacity, you don't want to eat up all your good land, because if it's master planned correctly, it can flourish. And then, Chairman, the schools are another issue, as far as, okay, with all this growth, you're already doing Northwest Elementary, you've got a middle planned, and, you blink your eyes, you're going to have 5,000 to 6,000 homes to develop.
So if you do R6, for instance, an acre is 43,560 square feet, okay? So an R6 is 6,000 square foot lot. You got to take some out for the road network and that sort of thing, and any sewer easements or water easements, things like that. But you could easily get, 36,000 would be 6 houses in there, whereas R10 would be about 3, R15 would be about 2, and so
On 1 acre.
on 1 acre, and that's what we need to be focused in on.
And multifamily is going to be about
Even.
depends, just duplex, triplex, quadruplex.
Correct.
So It just depends on how you master plan out these areas.
And if you remember, when we had our discussion about the major water and sewer trunk lines, particularly going to the north, and you remember we talked about what they were, how they were planned. And so it's all about what size lines did you put in anticipating what that development was going to look like. We did not design for R6s.
Right.
Not a whole lot of it. We designed for some of it, but not a whole lot of it. So my suggestion to you going forward is that as we sit down over the coming months, and it probably needs to be done over the next 3, 4, 5 months, so I can help you start that process. Your new manager will probably be here to help finish that process. We really need to get on these urban service area agreements, because that's where you're going to tie down we're not telling them how to zone a specific area. What we do need to make clear to them is your line capacities will accommodate this in aggregate. And if that number is 2 per acre or 3 per acre, you better think twice about giving out a whole lot of R6s and a whole lot of condominiums at 8 and 10 per acre, because you're eating up your capacity in that line. We're not talking about the plant now. We're talking about, although it will, because you will be bringing more sewage from households. But the real issue is going to be that major trunk line coming down out of Angier to Lillington to the plant. They're going to eat up that capacity if they keep going R6 with all this stuff. Now, I don't know how I can say that any more plainly.
No, I agree. It can't be a carte blanche with the towns, because now's what's happening is we're going to serve these developments from water and sewer, even though they want to be in different jurisdictions or different towns. And the reason developers are drawn to that is because they're getting more density. It's simply a financial transaction for a developer. If you can get another lot on an acre, that's millions of dollars on a big tract.
Right.
Especially when the lot's selling for $75K. So that's a lot of money. So, but there has to be, when we talk about urban service areas, and I know that's not what we really want to get into, but I mean, Mr. Wood's right. There has to be all sorts of language in there when we get to that point about, what we're going to accept, because you're really just looking at us being the water and sewer provider, the county, even though the towns continue to grow because of that density issue.
Good point, and I'm not throwing rocks or darts, but when you put 500, 750, 1,000 plus lots on the ground, I'll give you an example. 1,000 lot subdivision is like putting the town of Coates in the subdivision. So there's got to be some type of reserved land for commercial, retail, things, open space, things of that nature. And I think that's what we possibly need to do a better job of looking at. That's what we keep talking about the urban service area, but we're really going to have to hone in on that and make sure we grow smart.
Right. And the other point I want to make is, and this is no reflection on the towns, I was a city manager for 30 years. And so I understand annexation. I understand why towns want to grow and why towns need to grow. But if you look at the economic incentives for the towns and cities, to some degree, it conflicts with what you're trying to do, because you're trying to have growth with higher quality housing, right? You want, when people move in here, you need higher priced housing, number one, to help offset the cost of schools. Our number one burden is always going to be school construction and school operating cost. That's what's going to eat your budget up all the time. That's just the nature of county government. That's your biggest burden going forward. So from your standpoint, if you get 6 households versus 2 or 3, they have doubled your requirement for construction of schools. They have doubled your requirement for operation and maintenance of those schools. And I can't emphasize that enough. But now put yourself in their shoes. The legislature has limited cities' abilities to annex. It used to be, the law in North Carolina used to be, as something became urban, it made sense to annex. If you met certain criteria that you were urban enough, a city could go out and annex. That law was overturned. And I don't remember the exact time, because by then I was in county government, not at worry about it. But anyway, my point is that about the only way these guys can annex is either offer water or sewer or higher density. Now, here's the problem for our cities. You are one of the rare counties that has a countywide water and sewer system. So normally, they're the only game in town right around the city that would be able to extend sewer. Okay? And so they can say, well, if you want sewer, you've got to petition us for annexation. And that's what a lot of cities do. Well, here, that's not necessarily the case. For instance, in the Angier area, we have lines practically crossing each other. We're in the same proximity. So sometimes the developer would have a choice. I mean, he could go with our system or he could go with their system. And so,
Choice.
huh?
The developer does not have a choice. The town ordinance in Andrew says if he's within a certain distance of their line, he has to request annexation.
Okay, well,
and
that's a
tap
good,
those lines.
well, that's a good policy. If more of them would do that, we wouldn't come to the second problem. And the second problem is our problem. And that is, if they don't have an ordinance like that, then the only thing they have to sell annexation on is, if you annex to us, we'll give you more density in zoning than the county would. And that is where the problem comes in. And that is why I'm recommending to you is you've got to nail down that somehow in this urban service district agreements. Otherwise, they're going to overload your sewer lines and they're going to overload your water lines. And then we're going to be back into a situation on that end of the county like you ended up with on Anderson Creek, where you have plant capacity, but you can't get it.
No line capacity.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, and I'll just, this is just something to mull over. Think of a county like Johnston County. Okay, Johnston County's got 100,000 more people than we do. Grown like wildfire since 40 built. Everything from Smithfield back to Wake County. Their water and sewer systems are not as large as ours. They do have a county-wide system, and it's a large system. It's not as large as ours. The difference is they've been limited on capacity for years, both water and sewer. And it's not for a lack of money or anything else, but they've got restrictions on who they allow to develop. For example, you got to be near a town, like within 2 miles of an existing town, a radius or something like that. They've got development zones. So the same thing with I-40 and 95 and interchanges. So they limit development to that, especially sewer. So they don't have what we have. They don't have a 2,000 lot Lexington 25 miles from the center of the county where the water and sewer is provided. Just an example. They don't have a Serenity, 1,200 lots, 20 miles from your sewer and water plants. So they restrict actual areas where water and sewer development can take place. So that makes us unique too, because we allow development anywhere. If there's a tract and a developer, and we have capacity in the water, the developer can build the infrastructure to get it to the plant. And we're good with that. As long as we've got capacity in the plant, we allow that development. That doesn't take place in most counties or systems.
Right.
So we're totally unique in that, and some of the problems and issues we face going forward are because of that. You look like out in Matt's area. That is totally unique in North Carolina, where you've got 7,500 houses within a 1.5 mile radius, and that not be a, a jurisdiction, a town, and it's served by water and sewer. That's unheard of in North Carolina, just absolutely unheard of. So that makes us unique, and that gives us a lot of challenges that other systems do not face going forward. So we need to be wise with our policies.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that.
No, that's a good point, and that is why you also have your policy that says if a developer, if he's not near a line where he can tap on, then he has to pay for that infrastructure to get it to his development, because that economically keeps him from going 5 miles out and saying, okay, you need to bring the line to my piece of property. It's no, you've got to extend that. And what that does is that forces him to stay closer in to where your existing system is. Is everybody following that? Okay. Well, that is the policy we're recommending. I know that's a lot to take in at one time, and you may or may not be ready to put it on for the 4th, and I fully understand that. But I wanted to take the time today to go over this in detail with you and try to answer any questions you may have about it. It has a lot of moving parts, and the problem, as you can see, is you can't talk about capacity allocation without it getting into other issues and how it affects development and that sort of thing. So,
I don't think that's something we're ready for by the 4th.
Yeah.
Personally. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Well, you couldn't do it by the 4th anyway. You've got to advertise.
Yeah,
for a
you gotta
public
have,
hearing.
yeah, we gotta have a public hearing on this. I had that in the memo, but I didn't read that part.
I know you absorbed a lot, did a good job of explaining, and we've been working on this for weeks. What else could we do to help you question-wise, concerns? Is it you want to have another workshop? Do you want to, what do you think?
I think we need to have another, and since Chairman Matthews is not going to be here at our next work session, the next session where the whole board will be here will be the 26th of October.
Okay. But whatever y'all want to do as far as scheduling it, I think it would be there. We just identified 4 issues, and there's really a 5th one, and the 5th one is how big should the plant be? Now, you won't be able to address that at the October meeting, because as Steve said, that'll come once we get, a better feel for, on the financial end, what's it gonna cost, and then where are our partners on that? Are they willing to, pony up on that?
And the big one is the state has to tell us how large we can build it.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
They set those limits.
Well, the good thing is, if you decide you want to build a bigger plant, bear in mind, he didn't ask for 9, he asked for 15. So we're hopefully getting the approvals, and then that leaves the decision up to you as we move forward about what you want to do. Now, this does bring one other thing. As you talk about these issues, everything bleeds into something else. We've been talking about the ARPA money, both our ARPA money and hopefully some state ARPA money. So I'm going to suggest to you that I had hoped to put the ARPA stuff into the CIP. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to finish that before we really need to finish the rest of the CIP. I think we can have some discussions, which we plan on doing with y'all on some work sessions. I think you wanted us, as I recall, you wanted us to kind of list some things we thought might be viable or a good use of it, and then y'all were going to do the same, and then we were going to have Brian double check to see, is that a use we can make of it? I think y'all can see with this and where we're at with this and possibly a new water treatment plant on the north side of the county that we don't need to finalize what we're going to do with ARPA until we get this number back and we know what we're facing. Because 60 million is bad enough. 100 million is
right. Yeah, I would say about the plant, if you remember when I talked to the board and the board approved the project ordinance, like I said, we asked for 15 million. The state could give us authorization to build up to that much. Well, we talked about 3 MGD cells. So we wanted to build 3 at 9, and then some other towns like Anger asked us specifically to look at, well, what if we need more relatively quickly? So we wanted to get that permission to do up to the 15, build the 9, and then we could immediately drop another 3 million cell in there and go to 12 fairly quickly without upgrading all the other infrastructure. So we can be flexible with what we, eventually put on the ground there to treat.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because I wanted to ask that question, where we, so we're talking about, I know with water, we're talking about what, 4 million gallons a day sales?
Right.
With sewer, is it 3 million?
That they're 3 million,
Sales.
they're 3
Yeah.
million, they're actual tanks, Mr. Matthews. And so they're 3 MGD tanks where you
Right.
treat that much in those active cells.
So if we were to get permission for 15 additional, we don't necessarily have to build a 15 today. We don't have to fund them
Correct.
to do that.
Correct.
9 would get us where we need to be, and then we turn around and look at the next 3 or the next 3. We have that option.
That's right. That's what we did with the 7.5 plant here in Lillington now.
Okay.
We originally built 5.6, but we built the infrastructure to go to 7.5, and we came back to the state about 5 years later, and the permitting's not nearly as difficult and not nearly as long to go through that process, and then they upgraded to 7.5.
You have plenty of land.
Yeah, we've got a great site. We've got 50 acres out there. So land is not an issue going forward too. Sounds good.
Well, as,
Mr. Chairman, in reference
Commissioner
to-
McCoy?
In reference to the ARPA money, I think we do need to discuss that more in details, so we all be on one accord and understand what we are doing, so.
Right.
I'm proposing, I should make a motion, if I need to make a motion, we do have another work session to discuss this.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. I do believe that's the sentiment that I see and feel around the room here. Let me go back to number 4 if I could. Help me with that again. Now, we got, an initial 200 lot allocation, and then the chance to escrow another 200 lots. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
So, all right, so we've got 400, and then we're saying that when that builder sells 50% of the escrowed lots, so that's 100 lots, is
Right.
that correct? That they could go back and get another, and I'm guessing escrow another 200, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so wouldn't we be sitting at 500 allocated lots of that?
It's actually 50% of whatever they request. So if they request 400, they've got to pull 200 permits, then they can get another additional
Okay, I got
200
you.
lots.
That clears it up then. I know,
Right.
if my, high school math teacher was still living, she could tell you. I'm
Yeah,
not
there's a
very good
lot
at
of math
but,
questions in
yeah.
there.
so really, it should be 50% of the 400 lots.
Got you, 50%
Is
of the
that right?
400. That
Is
makes
that
sense to me. Got you, yeah.
That's right.
All right, we need to make that correct.
So if we
Well, I
move
think
this-
I think the ordinance kind of addresses that.
The ordinance will address it, it's
Yes.
50%.
But I mean, I just,
Whatever's
The
allocated.
total
You
amount.
mean on the memo?
Right,
of
so
what?
it used to be
Memo.
100 right off the bat, you gotta do 150.
Because another way to look at it is if they request 300 lots, right?
Right.
That's 100 over the 200 that they get anyway. So they
Yeah,
want
100.
300, there's still got to be a separate agreement. They put 100 into escrow and the 200 stays, but they still have to pull 150 of the permits
Gotcha.
to move on to the next 200 lots.
and I'll make these 2 corrections and get this corrected memo out to you, because I don't want you looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah, and that's fine. And it may have been that I just need a little more explanation than that.
No, you were
person.
right.
So, anyway.
I'd put the wrong number in there. Okay, well, if any of you have any questions as you're going through this, please don't hesitate to call me. We don't have to wait until the the planning session, because
So, yeah, excuse me, go ahead.
just gonna say, because we realize it's a lot. It's a complicated policy.
So I guess my question would be, will we have, do you feel like we'll have enough additional information to answer some of these questions that we can't answer today by the 26th, or do we just need to play that by ear?
What else did you want to know?
Well, I mean, you were saying when we get a little more information, I guess, from, was it the state or whatever, or we're good?
You mean about building the plant itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll take a little while for us, because those meetings have just been said and are
Right.
just getting underway. So it'll take a little while before we get any feedback on what those spec limits are.
But
I'm not sure that'll be done by the work session. Could be,
Right.
but that
okay.
would be helpful, but I'm not sure it will be.
Right.
I do want to stress one more time that we are close to our limits on
Right.
the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant in aggregate, when you add the NYTs. Steve has already told you his opinion is that both Angie or Fuquay Varina will be building that out very quickly. So when that comes online, we're going to be bumping our limits, okay? So I just want to stress that and say that the other thing I want to stress to you is what that means is that we are going to be allocating out a plant not yet built.
Right.
And so I think where we're at is we want that language in the allocation permit. Because I don't want somebody coming along and saying, well, you got to take me because you gave me this allocation. And I want it clear that we gave you that allocation contingent upon bringing that additional flow online if necessary.
Agreed.
And that way, if we've got the capacity at that time, he can go ahead. If it's not online yet and we don't have it, and we're consistently going over our permit, then that gives us the legal language to say, no, we'll have to delay it. I've run into this one other place in Lincoln County. When I got there, the state had changed their regulations, and overnight it threw them into being over allocated. And then we got put under a moratorium on that. So I'm very leery of that from a legal standpoint, having gone through it.
Okay, so I guess, Commissioners, my question then would be, the October 26th work session has been suggested as a possible time to revisit this. Does everybody feel good with that? Okay, I see nods all around. So, Ms. Capps, if you will make a note to put that on the October 26th work session agenda. In the meantime, give you a chance to further look at this after having Mr. Wood and Mr. Ward's explanation this morning. Obviously, a lot to digest and consider, but thank you both for that. Appreciate that greatly. Okay, Mr. Wood, I believe that brings us to the county manager's report.
Okay, well, you have the three things listed there about the October 4 regular meeting agenda. Before we go to that, Mr. Chairman, and the applications, could I just mention a few other things?
Certainly.
Okay. Wanted to make y'all aware the ad for the Economic Development Director is out. He had sent it out to us to comment on. I believe y'all have commented as well. So that should be out this week. The ad for the manager, I checked NCACC's site. I think it went on there about September 15. So I'm assuming it's gone out in a similar time frame for the others. So we're going into our third week on that one then, cranking up. So I would think after he's had them for about a month, shortly thereafter, he should start whittling those down and probably give you a call, and he'll be ready to give you his top 10 or so to where you can select and then start bringing people in for interviews. So I'm hopeful that around mid-October to October 20th, we should be looking at the county manager applications along with our consultant. On the economic development director, probably about a week behind that. But if he got it out on the 15th, I would think by October 15th, he should be also having what he's going to get as far as an applicant pool and start whittling those down and come back to you as well. So I think we're going to be busy, or you're going to be busy in the back part of October with interviewing people for both those positions. Just wanted to make you all aware, we had talked at the last meeting about trying to have a meeting with Dunn to talk about where they were on their moratorium and that sort of thing and how that would impact economic development. We did meet with them last Thursday. It was the chairman, Commissioner Johnson, myself, and Coley met with the mayor and city manager down in Dunn. I thought it was a very productive meeting. We were probably there for a good hour and a half, maybe a little longer. And there are some issues to go over, but one thing I will report to you is, the good news is that they have already engineered the three things that so far the state has said they have to do to come out of the moratorium. And they've not only engineered it, but they've awarded those contracts, and in order to award them, they had to line up their financing. So they are financed and out for bid. So I'm not going to get into the details of their estimate on time because that's, I think that's kind of confidential for them. But we feel better about where we are in terms of if we were going to put some sort of economic development down there into Edgerton Park. The one other thing I did want to mention also, they had talked about their alliance with Four Oaks, and I think y'all probably saw there was a big article in the paper, the Dunn paper, about that. Did everybody see that? If not, I've got a copy I can make available to you. So they talked a great deal about that and what their plans are there. The last thing I wanted to bring up, and it's just for discussion at this point, when we had the economic development people with Sanford Holzhauser come and give a presentation to the Harnett County Property Commission, that was a week ago, I think it was. And one of the things, and when we talked about hiring them, one of the things they had talked about, particularly with the Properties Commission, is they do evaluations of existing sites, what their pros and cons are. And one thing I should make you aware of, their expertise is not just in establishing these legal agreements on incentives and things. They actually do site evaluations for companies as well. So sometimes they're on the other side of the table from us. You know, they'll be doing this for a company that wants a site. What they've given me is a proposal for $11,000 for us to do the Edgerton Park, an evaluation on it. And I'd like y'all to give that some consideration and perhaps add that to the October 4th meeting. I only want to do one at this point because I'd like to see how well they do that. They did give me a sample of one they've done, but I'd like to do one and then see if we want them to do the Western Harnett Industrial Park and Brightwater. So I don't know what your feeling is about that, but that is one of the things we had talked about. And what we're trying to do is knock out a few of these things we know we're going to have to do while we're waiting to get the director on board. And this is one of the things we could go ahead and take care of if that's your pleasure to do that.
So with this, evaluation, I'm assuming that's a step in getting the site, being able to get the site certified. So would that lead to, can they do the site certification, or is that an additional step?
I can ask them that, but it would, what it's primarily going to do is point out to you the pros and cons of that site.
Right.
For instance, y'all heard in the meeting, he said one of the concerns in WIP is we don't have natural gas there.
Right.
So this would do a good evaluation of the property over there. And we will make them aware of the limitations on done now, but also the estimated timeline on that. Because we know Dunn has some sewer issues right now, but hopefully they're temporary and they're coming out of it. But we can certainly, Brooks, I'll go back and ask him about the certification, because we clearly want to do that
Yes.
on all of them.
Any thoughts on that, commissioners? Everybody agreeable for Mr. Wood to pursue that with Edgerton? Okay, I think I saw everybody nod.
Okay. So we'll put that on for the 4th then,
Okay.
to approve that. And I'll try to have an answer about adding in the certification. If it's not already in there, I got to go back and reread the
Sure,
proposal.
understand. No worries.
And that's pretty much what I had.
Okay, so on the drafted agenda for next week, are we good with that, Ms. Capps?
Yes, sir. I've got a couple items that I need to add, from the meeting today.
Ms. Commissioner McCoy?
Mr. Chairman, you didn't review the application, you didn't go over that, review the applications to serve on boards of commission.
Yeah, he's doing the agenda review first.
So what?
He's doing the agenda review right now.
Okay. Sometimes.
And then the applications will be after that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Capps, go ahead.
I got a couple of items to add. I believe you guys said to add to the consent agenda, adoption of the Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Yes, ma'am.
The DSS telework, do you want that under consent?
Mr. Wood, is that something that you would like to have formally approved?
I would. I'd like to put it under consent.
Consent.
I didn't detect anybody was opposed to it. And Matt, you're on the board, right?
I am, and the board had voted unanimous on that.
Right.
And they also have some policies and procedures in place to where they're gonna be monitoring those remote workers.
Right.
And plus,
Pick that up.
I mean, to commend Mr. Paul Polinsky, he does a great job of running his department, so I go ahead and have full confidence in that.
So everyone's agreeable with that going on the consent agenda? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then I have add the lighting rehab change order, and I'll leave that as an individual action in case they don't get the
That's right.
estimate back.
That's right. And if we get the estimate back, we can move forward. If not, we'll just table it till the next meeting.
And then I'll add the new Sanford Holzhauser item that he was just talking about.
Yes, ma'am. The evaluation of the Edgerton site.
Okay.
Okay, is that it? Okay. All right, on the applications for boards and committees, I think we had one I saw that had two people applying for the same position, so I would ask commissioners to review those applications and be really ready to make a decision on those next time. That was District 1 Board of Adjustments. And then we have 4 vacancies on the Harnett County Commission for Women and Youth. There have been resignations from 3 folks there. And then we have a request for reappointment on the Jury Commission. Everybody, any questions or comments about those? Everybody good with that? And then Mr. Wood and Ms. Capps have provided us a list of the upcoming meetings and invitations and dates of interest for everyone. Okay, any comments on any of that? Questions? All right, do we need to go into closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Anybody want a second or I miss it? Second, Mr. Johnson. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you for your hard work.